most of the time. Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting and work session for May 21, 2019. I'm John Hutchings, and this is
Gary Edwards.
Time Menser.
Ramiro Chavez, County Manager.
Thomasina Cooper, Assistant Prime Minister.
Lagomita Goldmark, Clerk of the Board.
and
Megan Farmer, Public Relations.
thank you. So we're going to start with this agenda. It's going to be action-packed. It's a real thick paper clip, or whatever we use today, but it doesn't look that daunting. We'll start with the agenda for this afternoon's 2 o'clock Board of County Commissioners meeting, but I'm going to start by reminding folks that there is no meeting next Tuesday, May 28th, right after Memorial Day. There's no meeting that day, but we will have a work session that morning and agenda setting that morning as well, but no meeting at 2 in the afternoon. So now we're going to jump to the agenda for this afternoon, and we'll start by calling the meeting to order at 2 and Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Chair Commissioner Edwards, or whomever he chooses. Then we'll look for an approval of the agenda for May 21, and then approval for the board meeting minutes from May 14. Then we get right into the meat of things and get to Public Works, a proclamation.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. The reason that most of us are wearing orange today is to celebrate and commemorate the National Public Works Week. That's a national event. And your Public Works Director, Jennifer Walker, will be this afternoon, and I believe with a bunch of staff from Public Works.
Will she be wearing orange or puce?
I'm sure she will be wearing the appropriate colors for the celebration.
I'm just curious.
And then it will give the board the opportunity to thank what I call the unsung heroes of the county public works staff.
Okay, got it. Questions, comments about that?
No, sir.
Jerry? Okay. Opportunity for the public to address the board.
I don't have anything in particular that perhaps that I know of. But you never know.
You never know. Are you aware of anything coming up? Are you aware of anything tonight? Okay, then the county manager's update.
Yes, I would like to provide a couple of updates. One is a response to public testimony you received from Mr. Pettit last week, where he gave to you a copy of 3 different reports. Within those 3 different reports, he highlighted a line item on the budget, the 2019-2020 budget. And the line item was labeled as repairs and maintenance. One report had different numbers between 2019, and the other 2 different versions of the report had different the facilities that we have here in the county, particularly in the courthouse. And also alluded to the fact that perhaps that was on a strategy from my part to make the case of the new courthouse. And also by having the 2 different reports, different numbers on the 2 different reports, he also alluded to the fact that perhaps we staff changed the numbers in the budget based on the public testimony that he was going to provide to you last Tuesday. That was the genesis of his public testimony. We were able to have a conversation after the we were able to have a conversation with missed an opportunity to explain to the public all this. But I will do this afternoon.
Thank you.
So we,
back.
and again, this is related to the public testimony you received from Mr. Pettit last week. And we asked Mr. Pettit to stay behind after the board meeting, and he kindly agreed to that. Through the process, we walked him through, and we were able to recreate the 3 reports that he provided to you. The different versions of the repairs and maintenance line item specifically. And the way we went through and recreated the report, as you know, we have an application, what we call OpenGov. and the citizens can go in and access the approved 2019-2020 budget. And since it's a database, any citizen can filter information as they can see, and when you use a database, if you use different filters, give you different results. So on the two different additional reports that he provided, he was using different filters, and I believe he understood that particular case. Also, on the first report, that he made a comment on the repairs and maintenance, that in 2018, the allocation to that line item was $1.7 million. And in 2019-2020, dropped down to $100,000. We were able to explain that that line item is related to computer replacement. And the reason that it dropped to that level, it was related to the split between central services and IT. So in the other sections of the budget, also you see the increase of the new IT department, where that amount also is higher. I think he also was satisfied on that response. And also I was able to give him page 39 of the Thurston County budget, where we specifically have line items for all the different maintenance and repairs projects that we have planned here in the county. So that has been, I believe, addressed, but I will follow up this afternoon for the public to see that we'll have circle back with Mr. Pettit. Any questions on that?
Do you have anything?
No.
Do you have anything?
No, thank you for spending the time with him to kind of go through that. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And as I've said before, it's okay to be wrong in your opinion, but it's not okay to be wrong in your facts. And Mr. Pettit knows he can reach out to you or Robin to get this information. Does he do that ahead of time, or does he just come in and question it during a BoCC meeting?
Myself and Robin Campbell, the Assistant County Manager, are always available to answer any questions him or any citizen have related to the budget. As you know, the county budget is close to $310 million. It's a very complex budget. It has thousands of line items. And within the context, all depends how you filter and how you filter the data, you get different results. And I believe that was the case in which he provided those reports to you.
Thank you. And I know you and Robin make yourself, as other staff do, available to the public regarding whatever the topic, regardless. So thank you. Next is the county manager's update. That's it?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. And then we move to item number 3 on the agenda, the consent items A and B. The first is the treasurer authorizing sale of tax title property.
Yeah, Commissioners, you reviewed this item last week, and as a matter of history for the benefit of the viewing audience, last year, let me go back. The process is when we have delinquent taxes on any properties in the county, it comes to a point in which become tax title property. That means it comes into not the ownership of the county, but comes on the oversight of the county. And in some instances, in the past, we used to surplus those properties and then attempt to, put them back into the tax status, as opposed to the tax exempt status, tax title properties. So last year, the board authorized the county treasurer to be systematic and diligent as to how we can go ahead and start surplusing the tax title properties, which we have many, many in the county. So this particular item for your review is a proposal to sell this tax title property to Mr. Edgar Ohms for $3,400 plus fees, which is $3,610 total. So before the treasurer can enter into a private negotiation, this particular property needs to be surplus and make it available to the public. The county treasurer did that and received no bids. So the next step is to engage in private negotiations, which is allowed by law under RCW 3635-120. And again, this is the result of this. This is a 0.34 acres. It's a little bit of a triangular odd shape property located in Rainier. And based on the Rainier building codes, if there is an unbuildable piece of property. So really is not where anybody can build anything on that. And that is the proposal before you.
Okay, anything?
Nope. No, sir.
All right, next is the voucher list. And do you have any questions about the vouchers?
No, sir.
No.
Then the several questions I had, you've already addressed them, so thank you. Then move on to item number 4, Superior Court increased mandatory arbitration fee.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners, for your considerations, for you to set a public hearing for July 9, 2019 at 3 p.m. in this room, Building 1 of the courthouse. In the past legislative session, the state law changes. That will be RCW 3618-016, parentheses 25, which allows for the increase of the arbitration fees. Right now, we have a $220 fee, and the proposal where you will be receiving public testimony will be to increase to $250 fee. And but there is a caveat on the new law. The additional $30 on the fee should be dedicated to indigent defense. And there's a fundamental difference. There's no indigent defense as we know it, that is managed by your Office of Public Defense, Patrick O'Connor's. Indigent defense and arbitration is for those individuals who cannot afford to pay the fee. That's really what the $30 is for. Any questions on that?
When was the last time that was upgraded?
I think that was updated back in 2015, if I recall well.
Okay.
But I'll get back to you with the specific dates, Commissioner.
Do you have anything on that? Now, just again, because it makes me feel better saying it, even though we talk about indigent defense, I prefer to call it equal justice for everybody. Okay, item number 5, Public Works, resolution to apply for a grant for salmon recovery.
Yeah, for your consideration is to allow Public Works to apply for a $160,000 in grant dollars from the Salmon Recovery Funding Board. And this is a little bit of unusual request because under normal circumstances, the application for a grant application doesn't require a legislative action. But in this particular case, because it's related to the Recreation and Conservation Office, the RCO requires the legislative authority to take an action, and that will be a commitment to apply for grant dollars. This is really what I call a procedural step that we need to take in order to apply for those dollars. And in the larger context of this, this is really an attempt to leverage the investment the Commission has put into the fish barrier removal program, which you have allocated $2 million a year since 2017. This is one example as to how we can leverage those dollars. As you know, the legislature approved $1.7 million also related to a fish barrier removal project. As in anything else, when you invest money, other money comes along. And certainly is going to give us the opportunity to take your investment from the real estate excise tax to even further with additional grant funding.
Questions, comments, anything?
No.
And this is good stuff, but with that, and I'll just look for a head nod or a chin shake from the Public Works Director. Does Thurston County still lead the state in fish passage barrier removals? Yes. Lovely. Okay, thank you. Item number 6, Public Health and Social Services approved treatment sales tax community grant awards.
Yeah, you review the applications for this period. This is for the community grants. And the community grants set aside of the treatment sales tax of $250,000 in 2019 and $250,000 in 2020. You review the applications, and Carrie Hennon from staff provided the recommendation from the review committee, which is the Treatment Sales Tax Advisory Committee. And I believe the board agreed to award the top projects. In this case, will be to Catholic Community Service for a total of $174,000, Capital Recovery Center for $158,000, and Family Support Center of South Sound for a total of $168,000. And again, that will be for a period of 2 years.
No, I'm good.
Good.
Good, thank you. 6B, approval of the 2019 CIP, that's the Community Investment Partnership Contracts.
Yes, you also briefly reviewed this item, and I believe last Monday, the CIP convened. And so the CIP, the investment, the Community Investment Partnership contract with United Way, and tried to set aside funding distribution for projects they may receive. So the CIP is composed by elected officials, representatives from the county, as well as the cities, and they have gone through a review process to determine what projects should be awarded those dollars. So the result of that interaction resulted on you considering awarding $180,000, I believe. Let me see. No, it's $444,814 to 11 nonprofits. Let me just walk you through what those 11 nonprofits is for the public awareness. The one-year award is to Catholic Community Services for $62,419, Community Youth Service for $24,000, the Rochester Organization of Families, $13,600, the Senior Services of South Sound, $10,000, Thurston County Food Bank, $70,000, and also the Thurston County Food Bank, in this case, is for the Hygiene and Household Program for an additional $20,000. That amounts to just about $200,000. The remainder is continue funding for those programs that have already been funded for the last 2 years. So this will be the last year of that process. And that includes the behavioral health resources for $23,400, Child Care Action Council of Thurston County for $8,775, Cielo Project Radio Ranch, $34,983, Community Action Council of Lewis, Mason, and Thurston Counties for $13,419. Pizza Clutch for $20,475. The Rochester Organization of Families, again, for $26,324. And the Together Organization for $117,420. That amounts, the last year of the 3-year awards amount to $244,795. If you add the two, it's $444,814. And that's the request for your consideration. And Gary Aiden is here to provide some feedback, and I believe Commissioner Mincer attended the CIP meeting, which also provided additional feedback.
Right, so if we can have Gary and or Tom come up, so I'm sure we got some questions. And I would just like, at the end, an explanation of some things processed, but do you have something, Gary? Go ahead. Oh, wait, introduce yourself, please.
Gary Eden, Public Health and Social Services. And Tom Webster, Public Health and Social Services.
So the community might have questions about priorities on how their money is spent. This money is all dedicated to this process. It isn't like we could go build a road or do something else with this funding. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct. It is not general fund. It is general fund in the sense that it came from the cities and towns, but it's money that is targeted to human services activities.
And that's, by law, it can only be spent in these certain areas.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, these guys will probably cover it, but you guys asked me last week to give my 2 cents, and we ran out of time. So I was pinch hitting for Commissioner Hutchings, and I just wanted to share that it was really, it was a robust discussion about the various priorities and what the considerations ought to be. People had obviously put time into, from the level of the technical committee and the CIP, people had put a lot of time into looking at financials and breakdowns of the different aspects of the programs. A couple of people who were at the table who had been in this CIP for a long time said it was the best discussion they'd ever had, and were really, so I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought I would share that because it seemed like they were genuinely felt that we had a really good discussion. A lot of the discussion was about looking at staffing and administration versus the actual money that would go to the direct service and the appropriateness. And I think there's a legitimate, kind of weighing of factors. There was definitely a desire to want to put the most money into the service that was going to hit the people that needed it. But there's also recognition that, if you don't have people to do it, it's not going to happen. So there was careful weighing of all that, and the technical committee did a great job. There was some tweaking, I believe, on one of we had two lists of different pools of money that we were working through, and I think there was, at least on one occasion, on one of those, these guys can probably give the detail, but there was some tweaking a little bit of numbers, but overall, the technical committee's recommendations, after some careful, back and forth, was pretty much adopted, I thought. I mean, there wasn't much of a deviation from what had been recommended up to the CIP from the technical group. So everybody did a good job, I thought, and I support the outcome of it. So.
Thank you for sitting in for me, and I appreciate that. And I want to thank staff right up front. You guys work on this throughout the year, but it really comes to a loggerhead at this time of year, where it's really push time. And so I want to let you know that I appreciate that. And you guys do a brilliant job. So, but for the people watching at home that don't know, of that nearly $445,000 that was allocated out, about how many applications came in, and then explain the review process, not so much the review process itself, but the review committee, how many on the review committee, and what are they comprised of before it comes to the CIP for a final decision.
So for this pot of money from the CIP dollars, there were 13 applications that were received. And these applications were reviewed by members of the CIP themselves. So these were the elected officials and 3 members of the United Way reviewed and ranked these applications, and then made the 1-year awards were for basic needs, and that's what they reviewed and ranked. And so there was 13 basic needs applications, which is the 1-year grant amount. The multi-year awards, the priority for those were youth and child resilience, and as the county manager said, those had been awarded 3 years ago. So this is the 3rd year of those awards. So those decisions had been made back in 2017.
Okay, but aside from the applications that we ranked and sorted out and rated, wasn't there a preliminary cut?
There's another large set of projects of another $5 million that's under a separate AIS that we'll be talking about here in just a minute. So this AIS only deals with the CIP,
Okay.
Those local sales tax dollars and United Way dollars.
Okay.
And we'll give you additional details on the next and the item 6D. I believe that's what you're referring to.
Got it. Okay.
And my comments was kind of about the whole
Right,
thing,
right,
both.
right.
I probably mixed up those
So
two.
this item is just related to the CIP,
Got it,
and I believe Commissioner Hutchins, you participated on the review
I did,
committee of the
yes,
applications.
yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. You have anything
Well,
further
I
on
guess
that?
just after this is all finalized, this will be available to the public on a website that they can take a look at if they want to see more detail.
Yep, this will be posted to our website. We're working with our public information officer. We'll put out a press release probably tomorrow.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, then 6C, approval of the United Way CIP contract.
Yeah, and this is somewhat related to the CIP, and the United Way contributes on a yearly basis a certain dollar amount. In this case, they're going to be contributing $180,000 for the efforts to fund the projects that you may be funding on the previous item. And this is an agreement that will go on a yearly basis between the county and the United Way for the county to be the fiscal agent, meaning the county will manage the contribution for United Way towards those efforts. It makes sense to bring that contribution to the county and just distribute it all at once, as opposed to have the United Way distribute those dollars on a different way. This is a very efficient way to do it, and for your consideration is to sign this contract. that goes from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020.
Okay. Anything? You have anything? Go ahead.
Is this about to change with United Way, putting funding towards these type of proposals? I thought we were in the midst of some adjustment.
Yeah, perhaps in the mix about transition.
Okay.
And I think coming into 2020, we'll know in more detail what that transition really is. But yeah.
Is that something you have anything to add to that?
The CIP hasn't been informed by the United Way that this is their last year they intend to participate in the CIP. So this is the 180,000 is their last year that they've committed to. And so there is discussions that will be happening in the coming months about what that transition looks like. But the cities have been informed that the United Way intends to move forward with their own process for their funds in future years.
I guess my follow-up would be, because they're unhappy with something that this process is doing that they don't agree with, what's the rub, if you will? I think the public has a right to know where their dollars are going.
Mm-hmm.
Not wanting to speak for the United Way, my understanding would be that they're looking for greater visibility for how their funds are used, and they want more branding, and there's a sense that United Way's brand is kind of being lost as it is merged in with the CIP. It becomes CIP is what is publicly recognized as these funds and not United Way. So I think they're looking for a little bit more visibility with how they use their own funds.
But their intention is to help, I think,
But yes.
as time
Yeah.
goes on. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay.
That's exactly it. They're not unhappy. There's no dissatisfaction or divorce, if you please. It is nationally they're rebranding.
Okay.
And you can't rebrand if you're just part of CIP, United Way down here. They want to come out and be a
Sure.
focal point, still doing the same work, but under United Way in conjunction with CIP.
Okay, I think that clarifies it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? All right, then 6D.
So 6D and 6E are related. 6D is for you to consider give the Public Health and Social Services Director the authority to sign a contract with the Washington State Department of Commerce from 2019 to 2020 for the Consolidated Homeless Grants, the CHG, and the Housing and Essential Needs, also known as HEN, for the amount of $5,935,955. And this provides funding for the county homeless programs and services, and also the item for your considerations to add additional 10% in the dollar amount, deviation on the dollar amount and duration of the contract. And I will explain a little more in detail in the next item as to where that expenditure will be. Okay. So it's two items. Item 6D is agreeing on the revenue getting from the state, and item 6E then is the distribution of those funds.
Any questions on 6D?
Well, I guess just that for the public's knowledge on it, those are dedicated funds that will be going to those purposes as laid out by law. Is that right?
And is what we call is there is a lot of strings attached to every single dollar that come to the county, and this to fund a specific
Can't
program.
fix any roads or build a
No,
bridge.
and yeah.
You have anything on?
And it's specifically related to county homeless programs and services.
Sure.
Okay, 6E?
So any questions on 6D?
No.
6E then is the distribution of those dollars. As you know, you approved early in the year to issue a request for proposals, and that was issued in February of 2019. The result of that, we've received 31 applications. 20 of which were for homeless and housing services. 5 were for housing capital projects. There was a review team, what I call review team of the experts in the industry, and that will be representatives from obviously the county as well as the local jurisdictions, and where they rank and provided recommendations to the CIP for funding. And I believe on the last meeting on the 13th, that was part of the conversations Commissioner Minzer stated. So the result of that recommendation was for the CIP recommended selected 4 capital housings for housing projects for development and affordable and supportive housing for a total of $956,899. Also 14 affordable housing and homeless housing and services projects serving low-income households and homeless individuals and families in the county for a combined amount of $4,407,977. Also, the CIP selected 6 housing basic needs projects for a total of $160,000. And lastly, the CIP set aside $475,000, and that will be to fund the cold and hazardous weather shelters during an emergency on the cold weather task force that we have also going in the county. The result of this is 30 housing contracts, and those 30 housing contracts represents to 13 nonprofit organizations. The list of those contracts I can walk you through, but it's quite lengthy. But certainly I can do that, but it's available online if anybody wants to see
We don't
that.
have that here with us, right?
Should be, no, it's attached online. But certainly I can distribute this copy before this afternoon so you're aware of that.
Any questions on that?
Would you like me to go through line item by line item on the 30?
I don't need it.
Okay.
No, I don't need it.
What is the communication between, I mean, did the groups that were awarded money, have they been notified they received what they're getting? I mean, how does that work?
Not officially, so after this meeting, after you approve these awards, then a press release will go out announcing all the awards.
Okay, because we're the
So
final.
I'm sure there's some informal communication that,
Yeah.
that folks know, because the CIP was a public meeting, and there were members there, so I'm sure
Right.
a lot of this out in the community, but officially, we'll put out a press release after the meeting this afternoon.
Anything?
I guess just a real quick question. The difference between the amount in D and the amount in E is about $64,000. I'm just curious how that comes about, just for clarification. I mean, do you just have a rough idea?
We can always use more money.
I'll dig into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So part of it is the CHG, the revenue contract in the state is a 2-year contract. So that money, really, we're spending half of that money in these contracts. These are 1-year contracts that we're funding. The other part of the money that's going into this pot is our local document recording fee funds. So it's really half of the CHG revenue contract plus all the local document recording fees that the county receives.
And by law, that is required to be spent in this manner as well, right?
Correct.
Okay, that kind of clarifies it for me then. Thank you.
Can't use it for carpeting.
Right.
Yeah.
And if there is additional revenue, obviously it provides additional capacity
Sure.
to respond to emergencies.
And this is the question I asked earlier, is about this, of that screening group of the subject matter experts of this nearly $6 million. What is the number of that group, that vetting process and of the subject matter experts? How many are there? Do we know? You know.
There were 7 folks, 2 representatives from the county, 2 from the city of Olympia, 1 from Lacey, 1 from Tumwater, and then 1 person from TRPC who represented the South counties.
Okay, good. And again, they're not just handpicked. These are subject matter experts in this arena.
Correct.
Okay. And again, thank you for that work too. And that's about the same, almost $6 million, nearly $6 million every year, isn't it, that we give to nonprofits?
Yes.
For housing?
It fluctuates a little bit, but yes, it's around that figure.
Yeah, substantial money. All right, thank you. Anything further?
And just elaborating on what you just said, Commissioner Hutchins, this is a program that has been in place for a long, long time in the county, and it hovers about that amount. So the county does support and has contributed to address the housing and homeless services by those investments. And that is the process that we'll go through, and is a well-coordinated effort with the cities as well, and I believe allocated to the nonprofits. What I call boots on the ground is the most effective way to distribute those dollars.
Right, thank you, because it's taxpayer dollars still, yeah. the recording fees. All right, agenda item number 7, county manager, approval of our work summary sessions. Thanks,
Yeah.
Tom, thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
for
Thank you,
2018.
Commissioners. Under normal circumstances, this item will be on your consent agenda, but considering this is the 2018 work session minutes, and Commissioner Messer was not part of that conversation, then it will allow you to vote Commissioner Hutchins and Commissioner Edwards. They were part of that.
Yeah,
have a
go
question
ahead.
about that. Because there's only 2 of us here that were here for this. Is this a time-sensitive item? And I don't know about the other board members, but I'm kind of telling on myself, I have not had adequate time to review this. So I want to know if it's time-sensitive.
No.
And possibly it could be put on an upcoming meeting.
Absolutely. The next meeting is June 4th.
I mean, is that okay, though? I don't want to cause a problem, but I would like to, before I vote on it, have time to review it.
Absolutely. That's within the purview of the board.
Is that okay with you?
Oh, it's fine with me, yeah, it's okay with you?
Yeah, makes sense.
I just want to ask, or just want to reiterate for the public that we're looking to approve work session summaries from this board from April of 2018, August 2018, September 2018, and December 2018.
That is correct.
And we're putting off because there's no urgency.
No, there is not an urgency.
Okay, and give a commissioner time to look at it. That's fair. I just want to state that that's exactly what we're doing, just putting it
Yeah,
off.
if somebody requests, members of the public request the meeting minutes of those meetings, then we'll let them know the board has not approved yet and they're available, and we'll just wait. That's not a
Perfect.
Not a big issue?
big issue, no.
Okay.
So we'll bring the,
And are we, I guess follow up to that, are we trying to stay kind of ahead of this?
yeah, and
So that
if you
we
see,
don't
now
have
we're
this
catching
in
up to
future?
December, we're trying to keep up
Okay.
with that.
Good.
And also you have approved
Okay.
meeting minutes of this year as well, so we're doing a lot of work. There's
Thank
a
you
lot
very
of
much.
There's a lot of business that you conduct, commissioners, and there's a lot of notes
business
that we need to
well,
take.
for the public's, so they know, I mean, there's a lot of activity that goes on behind the scenes that doesn't
Okay.
take place here.
So
A lot of important business.
absolutely. So June 4th?
Is that okay that
Yeah.
we do that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, we got it, good.
Anything further on that one? Probably not. Now we're on to 7B, reappointment to the Ag Advisory Committee.
Yeah, this particular item, that was for your consideration last week, but Commissioner Edwards was not present. And again, this usually those items are included in the consent agenda. But considering that you had a discussion maybe 3-4 weeks ago, where it was the majority of the board, I believe Commissioner Hutchins and Commissioner Edwards and Commissioner Messer rescinded to bring this item for full consideration. So that is why it's as an agenda item for you to exercise your discretion on your vote. Leading to this, we have received 10 written comments and 1 voicemail, all urging the commissioners to not take an action appointing Mr. McNamara to the Agricultural Advisory Committee. In each of those, I believe you have received copies of those written testimonies, and some they said delay, some said don't do it, and there's a lot of detail on some of those. I'm not planning to go through that. I assume that you had the opportunity to review those comments on your own. Also last week, Commissioner Menser asked me to share with you the findings of fact from the Washington State Conservation Commission. And I distributed that copy to Commissioner Hutchins, Commissioner Edwards. And in this particular matter is when the Washington State Conservation Commission, which oversees the Thurston conservation districts, or the conservation districts across the state, where they took an action to remove Mr. Eric Johnson and Mr. Richard Mankemeyer from the Thurston Conservation District. And it was based on 2 complaints. One, it was the neglect of duty by the two members, Mr. Johnson and Mr. McNamara, on the Thurston Conservation District, because the two of them serve as supervisors. I believe Mr. Johnson was appointed and Mr. McNamara was elected. That's how it came to be. So the first was the neglect of duty, and the two complaints on that, and also malfeasance charges against the two. The whole process was determined that the Mr. Johnson and Mr. McNamara were, at least from this process, found they were at fault, and they were removed accordingly from the Thurston Conservation District. This matter was completed on, I believe, in March 2019, I believe. Let me guess. And the next steps, whether this action by the Washington Conservation Commission is appealable, and that can be appealed to the Thurston County Superior Court. This is the Reader's Digest of these findings of fact, and open for discussion as to how you'd like to move forward.
So I'm sure each of us are going to opine on this. We have opinions and something to say. You want to do it alphabetically? I'll start with Gary.
Do you know what position Mr. McNamara holds now on the Ag Advisory Committee?
So he holds that position, is that reappointment.
Yes, I know, but do you know what position he holds there?
I think he's a representative of the agricultural.
Yeah, but I think he's the chair.
He's the chair.
I don't know that, so
Okay.
I wasn't tracking on that.
Can we get Josh to the table? Do you have information for us as well, Josh, or not?
Well, put Josh on the spot.
I will.
I believe only to affirm that he is currently the chair.
Who are you?
Oh, hello. My name is Joshua Cummings. I'm the Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. One of the boards and commissions that's within CPED is the Ag Advisory Committee.
Okay, and I guess my follow-up to that would be, have we had correspondence from the individuals that also serve on the Ag Committee requesting that we take a certain action?
No that I know of, Commissioner.
Not that I know of, but Josh, you're here. So
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of either. So this is kind of a rub between two different factions, I guess. One, if you want to call it an election through the conservation group, it's questionable, I guess I'd say. I know the legislature is looking at the process. I feel it's been a very dysfunctional group in the past, including the Washington State Conservation Commission. There are allegations of improprieties that have been taking place there, personal gain. I know members of the legislature are looking at both of these issues. My opinion is that these individuals, whom I didn't know at all before they came to me, I looked at them as whistleblowers, trying to point out discrepancies that were obvious to them that they thought were being not conducted properly. This board had no authority either to look into that or to oversee that. So I don't believe adequate investigation went into it. I've been involved in a lot of investigations over the years. I reviewed the investigation that supposedly took place by staff from the state organization. It left a lot to be desired. The whole process, it's been referred to by others to me that they thought it looked a lot like what would be called a kangaroo court. I don't know if that says it all or not. But the Ag Committee seems to be very content in what they're doing and the process in which they are going. And the Conservation District, it looks a bit retaliatory on their part to, we'll show you, we got you kicked off this board, now we're gonna get you kicked off of everything else. So that is my concern. I appreciate whistleblowers in government very much. I think they help us keep government bureaucracy in line. That maybe didn't come to fruition on this particular case, but there is still litigation pending between, I believe, these individuals named and the State Conservation Commission. When one of these individuals took action against the record-producing process involving the Conservation District and Washington State University, they prevailed in court and won a $25,000 judgment. I guess that one has been adjudicated in these individuals' favor, but there's yet to be completion of other litigation. I would hate to be viewed from this body as taking sides on this issue and responding in a retaliatory fashion, because we've not seen the end of this story yet. So I answer any questions or my teammates if they have.
Go ahead.
So, just to be clear, I didn't hear any information from anybody about this. This was brought up on an agenda a few weeks ago, and I was surprised by it, and I have objected to this. The findings from the Conservation Commission on the last page say that the commission this was after a day-long trial by the State Conservation Commission, said the commission finds that Supervisor Mankemeyer failed to maintain a workplace free from perceived harassment, which affected, interfered with, and interrupted the performance of the duties of supervisors, of staff, and of the district. The commission finds that Supervisor Mankemeyer also failed to implement the recommendations provided to the supervisors by Endurus, the risk-sharing pool, and risk management specialists for special purpose districts. This wrongful conduct added increased costs to the district in the form of a rate increase for coverage and an increase in the district's deductible coverage. The district is at risk of losing coverage completely because of this conduct. So the findings were neglect of duty and malfeasance. I've met Mr. Mankemeyer. He's a very nice man to speak to on a personal level. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with retaliation. Nobody moved to take him off the board. He's asking for reappointment. There are a lot of overlapping issues between the Agricultural Advisory Committee and the Thurston Conservation District. I'm very troubled by the fact that even if Mr. Mankemeyer was correct initially, he was given a set of recommendations by the consultants for risk management to try to fix the problem and completely ignored them. And that has caused liability issues on the part of the Conservation District. We all know the Conservation District lost a massive amount of funding and basically almost had to close doors because of this conduct that was found to be malfeasance and neglect of duty. Now, I've heard criticism in the past from this board and about the Thurston Conservation District. I've never heard till today an allegation that the State Conservation Commission is also somehow, derelict of duty or there's weird stuff going on. One of the comments we got from the public this week was about, they went through the composition of that State Conservation Commission, which I didn't know. I watched the first hour of the proceeding. It wasn't a kangaroo court. It was a very, it was 12-hour trial over at the hotel here in Olympia, with all of these board members there who are all represent different members of the community and have different statuses in their role as State Conservation Commission folks. Anyway, my point is that whether there is or isn't something going on or merit to Mr. Mankemeyer's positions along the way, the idea that this board would reappoint somebody I think would, in light of these findings, in light of the blatant ignoring of the recommendations to fix the problem, that put our conservation district at such incredible peril, frankly would astonish the public, in my opinion, and it astonished me that it just kind of blew by us a few weeks ago, and we said 2-1 to put him on. Again, I think Commissioner Edwards is right. There is more to this story. They filed lawsuits. Their initial lawsuits were tossed out. They have a right to appeal. They may go on, but I've got a very substantial record that tells me it's not appropriate or well founded for me to appoint Mr. McMeyer to the Ag Board. So that's my position.
La Bonita, I have a question for you. I hope you can answer it. How long has he been on, because I don't have his application, how long has Mr. McMeyer been on the Ag Advisory?
He was appointed,
Oh, thank you.
May 12, 2015.
15, so almost 4 years.
Correct.
Okay.
And he was appointed as a farmer member and lives in District 2.
Okay. And do we know how long he's been chair? I don't know if you would even have that.
I do not.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, Ty, thank you very much for submitting this or getting copies. It's an eye-opener, and I went through this with a fine-tooth comb last night and talked with several members that surround the Agricultural Advisory Board, and did some data mining, and I wrote some notes here, so I'm going to read my notes because there are too many for me to remember, and I don't want to leave something out. This is a very important decision. But I did read the Washington State Conservation Commission finding of fact, and it is dated March 2019. And I talked with ag staff across the board, and the State Conservation Commission had 7 recommendations, of which only 2 were to remove Mr. Mankemeyer. The State Conservation Commission, they stated here, a supervisor may be removed by the state. And I'm thinking at least the state is acknowledging some responsibility for the Agricultural Board, or for the Conservation District, rather, because they set this up back in the 40s, I believe, saying your county will have one, but they don't take responsibility for providing legal advice or offering the Attorney General to represent the Conservation District. They're kind of left floating for the county. And it's kind of, the way it's set up is, in my opinion, is lacking process. And but they're stating that they're not. You're stating that they're not. Anyway, so let's move on. Malfeasance is in the document as well. Yet none of the complaints of similar behavior are lodged against Mr. Mankemeyer on the Ag Board. The state finding in complaint number 2 says Mr. Mankemeyer failed to provide accurate, timely record of district business, yet there's conflicting testimony present in all of these cases, or in this clause here, that caused the delays. And many organizations, to improve the BoCC, we have delays of minutes and actions for months. And in this case, we just did that for the minutes for over a year ago. And so I think that's why I had it repeated. I just wanted to be sure this is what we're doing, and this is what he was accused of doing, is putting off business minutes and notes, causing delays. Complaint number 4, delay approval of timesheets, yet the state acknowledges the district financial policies are inadequate. Complaint number 5, Mr. Mankemeyer made inappropriate comments and conduct and failed to respond to the district's insurance risk management recommendations. The state says that Mr. Mankemeyer failed to maintain a workplace free of perceived harassment. They didn't call it a hostile work environment, but perceived harassment. And complaint number 7, which is, says the complaint is malfeasance, doesn't even mention Mr. Mankemeyer. And this decision is appealable. And I have no idea if they're going to appeal or have appealed. I don't know. But it's still a work in progress. So a little bit of history. Mr. Mankemeyer has a minimum of, what, 5 years, 4 years? 4 years on the Ag Board, and chair at least 2 years, and I'm told. And he was voted as the chair by the majority of the 11-member board. 7 are farmers and 4 are non-farmer representatives, and yet 2 years ago they appointed him, or they voted to elect him to be the chair of the board. I looked into to see if there was any complaints or concerns as to dysfunction or inappropriate behavior, and was met with crickets. Nothing. There's nothing documented. No complaints have come in. There's nothing exhibiting itself with the Ag Board. And by all accounts, Mr. Mankemeyer is a functional member of the Ag Board and as a chair. The board is comprised of diverse representatives from across the county, small farms and non-farmers. And Mr. Mankemeyer and his daughter have a small vegetable farm, and they do aquaponics. They're the only ones to do aquaponics. So it's a very unique perspective that he brings to the agricultural board or advisory board. Representation on a board requires and needs diverse representation of our community, very diverse. And Mr. Mankemeyer has been described as having great input and great contributions, and feels strongly about the Agricultural Advisory Board. Now, us as the Board of County Commissioners, we must actively avoid, my opinion, groupthink when it comes to appointing people to all boards and commissions. It's incumbent upon this board to see where our gaps are on the boards and plug those gaps. This discussion is very important. Thus, this issue involving the Thurston Conservation District is exceedingly or an exceptionally politically charged event. And for me, basing a decision based on politics is wrong. Politics have no place on our boards and commissions, and to do so, in my opinion, is unprofessional. Yes, Mr. Mankemeyer has suffered a black eye with the Thurston Conservation District, but please remember the Conservation District and the Ag Board are not connected to each other. They don't work together at all, and there's no impact on each other. If we do not reappoint based on public comment, then we must be prepared to go through the same vetting process via public comment with every proposed member to a board or commission that this BoCC presents. And in my opinion, at the end, that's irresponsible. That's manipulation, and at the end, it leads to groupthink. The decision is not as much who a person is as it is what they know and what they bring. And even when I was in law enforcement, it was more about how to resolve issues and create a more valuable member of an organization than just toss someone out and fire them. So this begs the question of a greater policy issue. I'm not sure who supervises our boards and commissions. However, perhaps we need a county procedure or policy that standardizes all of our boards and commissions. Someone to monitor members, and if we provide strong leadership, perhaps we will have strong leaders guiding our boards and commissions. If we have one or someone that is unable or unwilling to step up, then we remove them, and only until then. And restorative justice is used in reference to people that have committed a crime, that have been incarcerated, and giving people a second chance. But for me, restorative justice is it's a much broader application than just people that have been convicted of a crime. So that's where I lie right now, my philosophies, and I'm willing to reappoint Mr. Mankemeyer.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. We'll bring this item this afternoon, stays on the agenda, and then you will exercise your discretion this afternoon formally.
Thank you. We need to get the register on that door fixed. All right, any further comment on that, though?
No,
We're
sir.
not done, just, you have any further comment?
I
Any
guess the
further?
one thing I'd say, the citizens that do serve on these boards for us do so with no pay, and they put a lot of time and effort into it. So I'd just like the public to know it's not like they're getting compensation, you know, and taking a trip to Hawaii or anything.
I tell you, these are tough decisions
Yeah.
for all of us. And again, I think it's a broader picture as well that needs to be dealt with, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. I hadn't seen that. All right, that concludes 7B Boy. Now we move into the commissioner items and the county manager and updates. And I'll remind everybody, please, there is no meeting next Tuesday, May 28th, 2019. And that'll conclude the BoCC. And now we're moving into the Transportation Benefit District. And I turn that over to the president, President Ty Menzer.
Okay. Good.
Good morning. Jennifer Walker, Thurston County Public Works Director. So we have two items on the agenda for today. The first is a presentation highlighting ways that we've incorporated innovations and efficiencies into our to make the most of our transportation dollars. We also will be sharing how our other local jurisdictions around here who have funded TPDs, how they funded them and what they're doing with them. And then we'll provide a recap of the Transportation Benefit District survey that we conducted at the end of last year. And these are all follow-up items to April's meeting. And then the second item will be my director's report. Any questions?
Anything from?
I do, but
Go for it.
I'm waiting for the chair's recognition.
You got it.
Okay?
You recognize him? Looks familiar.
We had some question brought forward, it might be a couple of meetings ago now, about the dollar amount that we've been expending on the Transportation Benefit District and how that might be paid back at a future date if there was a funding source to develop. I don't know if now is the time to get into that, or if you want to get into that at the meeting at 3:30 to give you time to review, but I am curious, a couple things. What happens if there is no funding source developed for the Transportation Benefit District? Where are we at on that expenditure, and what budget does it come out of? Does it continue to linger? And then there seemed to be quite a bit more in this last year or so that was expended, and from where. I'm thinking it's from the road fund, but I need to know that for sure. And I'm curious why the amount expended seemed to be quite higher than initially was spent in the first portion of the Transportation Benefit District.
Those were a lot of questions.
So you
But
can
no,
do
I'm
it
happy
now or
to
then?
respond. Absolutely. So the increase from last year had to do with the survey that we conducted. And we're going to give another recap on that. So we went out and did a statistically valid survey. We contracted to have that done to get a sense of what the community thought about our roads, about funding the Transportation Benefit District and how to do that. So we'll give a recap on that. Oh,
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
okay,
I'm
and
just
then
flagging.
the cost has all been covered by the road fund. If the Transportation Benefit District is ever funded, the road fund would be reimbursed. Short of that, it will be absorbed by the road fund. There won't be a writing off of it. It will just be absorbed by the road fund, similar to what we might need to do regarding Summit Lake and the Special Use District.
County manager.
Following up on what Jennifer stated, if there is not a funding revenue from the TBD, then it will be considered as an uncollectible debt. And the result of that will be the road fund will absorb that.
Did you have more follow-up for Commissioner Edwards, or is that?
Did I answer all your questions?
Somewhat. I'm just curious when you, maybe to the county manager, when you make that comment that it'll be uncollectible. I'm trying to equate that to something. Recently, we did something involving the juvenile process in which there was quite a debt that had accumulated over 20 years or more. And then we cleared the book somehow through an action by this board. I'm curious if that's the same type of process that will take place?
No.
Sometime in the future? That's all.
We won't be writing it off because we never booked. It's been absorbed by the road fund,
So, I mean,
it
it'll
won't be a
just
writing
carry
off.
on as a debt for the next 20 years, and there's no way to clear it?
And I think what Jennifer is stating is the debt has already occurred. The expenditure has already occurred. And it never was, at this point, since the TBD has not taken an action on the revenue, never was booked as a revenue. So that's what the difference is between the previous actions that you have taken. In past, for instance, on the juvenile court, when you retired the debt, there was a revenue line item added to that. And that revenue number never materialized to compensate for the expenditures. And that's the difference between the two. Here, the revenue never was added as part of the funding, so it was more just absorption of the road fund. So we will never be able to collect that.
So what is that debt now? Where we're at? And if you don't know that, at 3 o'clock, you can go over it, whatever
The
you
total?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll let you know at 3.
And maybe a breakdown of those expenditures, you know, whatever the survey cost or were involved, and how much is dedicated towards staff working on these projects versus other activities. I'd like to have a little better breakdown of the expenditure. That's all.
Okay.
Commissioner Hutchins.
These are pretty easy questions. I don't know if you can answer them or not, Jennifer. I'm looking at,
No pressure.
it's not the end of the world, and it's nothing like we just went through. I'm looking at the funding options for the county, and number one, it shows up to $20 vehicle fee for the car tabs, but it shows an estimated revenue of 1.9 to 4.9 million. Is that based upon whether it be a $20 or a $40 increase? There's such a big difference there between
I'm not
the
sure
two.
what you're looking at.
Oh, yeah, towards very end, third from the back page, it says funding options.
Is it on the stack of material that doesn't have any page numbers?
Mine has a page number, it's
Yeah,
19.
I don't have a page number, I'm
Okay.
sorry. It's third from the back, though.
Okay.
Do you see it?
I
Funding
do
options?
see it,
Okay.
yes, I think that's going to be the range, so.
Depending on what
I'm
the
not sure if
fee-
they went up to $50 on that or not.
I think I remember that the TBD could
You
could
could-
vote on a car tab up to a certain point.
Up to 40.
You would have
20.
the option to go to a higher amount to the voters.
Correct.
Yeah.
But
And that-
20
maybe
the
that's
first
the
time.
So
complete
related to the vehicle license fee, the TBD has, just to that item, has a couple of options. So the first action the TBD could take is either going to $20 or up to $40, right?
Okay.
If the TBD chooses the $20 option, then is a waiting period of 2 years until you can increase that, similar to what the City of Olympia has done it.
Right.
In another 2 years, that you can go up to $50. But if the TBD chooses to go all the way up to $40, then it will be a 2-year waiting period, and then the TBD can go up to $50. In either case, beyond the $50 vehicle license fee has to go to the voters.
All right, so
That's the
anything
threshold.
beyond that, below that, then the voters don't get a say.
What we call is
just-
councilmatic.
Okay, so that's why the difference between 1.9 and 4.9, okay, thank you. And the 0.2% sales tax would bring in, generate about 1.3 million. So my question is, I understand cities are different when it comes to sales tax revenue and different in the amount of vehicles they have, so it's like comparing oranges to kumquats. But do we have any idea what kind of revenue their Tumwater, Lacey, and Olympia are generating? Because some do the sales tax and some do the car tab.
Yes, I think that Scott's going to go over that this afternoon in his presentation,
Okay.
in that first piece of it.
Just wondering what kind of revenue they're generating,
Yeah.
sales tax-wise versus the car tab. That's all. That's all I have.
Okay.
Commissioner Edwards.
Getting back to that, the page with no page number on it. Vehicle fees, car tabs, 1.9 to 4.9. Is that the maximum through this board's ability? And then if we go to the voters, what would the maximum be? I'm not sure I have that right either, I bet. So 1.9 would be $20, I take it.
And 4.9, I believe, would be 50.
And
And then for voter approved, you could go up to $100.
100. So I guess what I'm curious about is, in reality, you could, we could be talking roughly 2 million or 10 million instead of 2 or 5.
Yes, I think how
Is
it's
that
broken.
right?
I believe so. I think the way it's,
Why did you pick the halfway point? I'm just curious.
we have it separated out between the board approved and voter approved.
Except the 50 is also voter approved, isn't it? Or
No.
Not if you wait 2 years.
incrementally, it can go up to
It's
50
a
by
2-year
the
waiting
board.
period.
Okay, good enough. That solves it. Okay.
So, Jennifer, two things that I'm going to throw out, and I don't know if they have answers, but I just wanted to throw them out there.
Okay.
Because right after our last meeting, I had a meeting with the Scott Lake Neighborhood Association, and because all that stuff that we talked about, we were talking about the maintenance schedules and how the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets, and all that was fresh in my mind. So I was just kind of holding court with this neighborhood association, and I thought, well, I got a focus group here right in the county, and like see what they think about these ideas that we have and how do they feel about the roads. And so anyway, we had a discussion, and they were really curious about the different ways that we could go about fixing the roads. They were concerned. But two questions that came up that one of them was about, one of the citizens was a data analyst type of person, I think for the state, and he was really concerned about the administration costs of figuring out, like, if you did car tab, figuring out who lives in the county and who lives in terms of the vehicle, like the registered owner of the vehicle. And I told him that I thought that, because the Olympia is already doing it, and I said I think the processes are probably cheap and simple, but he didn't understand. He had a lot of knowledge about how that kind of a
Okay.
technology would work,
Okay.
and he was really concerned about how we would be accurate and cost effective in administering a car tab fee program.
Okay.
So that's one issue.
Okay.
And then the second thing that came up was another gentleman who, and this is probably a little bit out of left field, but he said that he'd researched, he wanted to know, why does Washington pay more for road maintenance? Not that we spend more, but that, like, when we have a cost estimate, say it costs $40,000 per mile to do a chip seal or whatever, like all the different sort of prices that we have advertised, he said, if you look at other states, we're paying way more. I don't know if it has to do with union labor, or I don't know what it has to do with, but I told him I would touch base with you at some point, and we can do it later, but I
Okay.
just, if you have any response to that, it's something that a citizen thought that Washington spent more on its road maintenance activities than other states. I know it's a little bit out of left field, but I promised him I would share that.
Okay.
Yeah. Commissioner Hutchins.
And that brought up another, you triggered something in my head. That was, especially in rural Thurston County, very rural, there was concerns with what vehicles would be exempt from that $20 car tab. And from what I'm told, or from what I understand, we could make those exemptions, for example, all the implements of husbandry and such, trailers and tractors and things like that, that might be licensed, but they would be excluded.
Okay.
Is that true that we have the discretion on exemptions? Do you know that?
I believe we do, yes.
Yes, you do have the ability to exempt, certain type of vehicles. And also, but I'd like to go back to Commissioner Menson's question. The county does not make the assessment as to who pays the vehicle license fee. Is the Washington State Department of Licensing who goes through that process. So it's really, the Department of Licensing is the one who tells us who pays within the context. So
if we tell them we've passed this, it's
Yeah.
basically up to them to.
So what we provide to them
assess
is
it?
obviously the legislative action, and also we provide the boundaries of the TBD. Because as you may recall, the boundaries of the TBD excludes the incorporated cities and towns. It's just the unincorporators of the county. So then I believe the Department of Licensing, based on the geographic area, make the determination who will be bound to pay this.
That's all I had. Anything else? on
Um,
TBD?
What was the cost of the study again, survey?
I'm not prepared to answer that right now. We went through it in the annual report, and I'll make sure we have a copy of it and go through that with you this afternoon for sure.
Okay. And again, I would, any other counties funding road repair this way
No.
in the state of Washington? No other counties are doing this.
No other counties.
And that brings me to the fact that this probably is not a way to solve this problem of no revenue to do projects in Washington state for counties. And that is because Phase 2 of the Growth Management Act was never implemented. Phase 2 was supposed to give counties some sources similar to what the cities had. And so by adding this $20 fee, 40, 50, whatever we go to, is really not gonna, it's gonna be a piecemeal. It will help, but it will not give the citizens any better roads because we continue to have to divert money out of roads to pay for law enforcement requirements. So it isn't like we could go to the citizens and say, if you do this, we're gonna widen a stretch of the road or do something else, because we're not gonna be able to do anything else. We're always robbing from Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. And that's why I cannot get enthused about this type of a funding source, because it doesn't solve the problem. It does cause aggravation to citizens, and they would like to think they're getting a benefit, but in the end, they're just not going to get a benefit. That's the reality of it. So until the state works with the counties, and I know the counties association is working on this, until we come up with something that is a viable fix to our situation, and when I say our situation, the 39 counties in the state of Washington, I don't think this is a viable approach to fix this, and that's why no other counties have done it either. That's it.
From my perspective, thank you. I think that there's not going to be any one fix. I think of most of the programs, there are several funding mechanisms, several funding sources to address issues. So I don't think that staff is proposing that this is the one fix. I think it's a piece of the solution.
Mr. President. One other thing, I'd like to have the public be aware that out of the 50 cents, I don't know, it might be 49 cents, that each citizen pays for each gallon of gas purchased in the state of Washington. That's the state tax. That's not the 19-cent federal tax that's added onto it. But out of that 50 cents for each gallon of gas, Thurston County gets roughly 1/4 of 1 cent. The rest of that money goes to the state to do whatever they want to do. You know, like build floating bridges that sink on the way to the location. So you might, I'm being a little bit, I guess I won't go into it any deeper. I don't have a lot of faith in the way the state has spent the citizens' money, but we only get 1/4 of 1 cent out of 50 cents. And I think that is ludicrous. So anyway, I just wanted to make that statement.
Just before I call you, I just wanted to, I'm remembering our last conversation about, and I think what I remember was there were a handful of counties that had passed TBDs like we have to
Correct.
study it, but none had actually imposed
Been
the fee.
funded.
So we're kind of on par with 4 or
Correct.
5 other
Correct.
counties that are putting themselves in a position out of necessity.
Correct.
I don't think anybody's excited about the idea of a card flat
Correct.
fee.
I
but-
think it certainly is legislation that's been passed that gives counties an opportunity to generate revenue for transportation. Now, whether we choose to take that opportunity or not, that's for the board to decide.
Mr. Hutchings.
I have a question, and this is not involving you, it involves us. As prior, the last 2 years as the Board of County Commissioners, we have diverted road fund money to other legitimate legal means or areas of the budget. And it makes good sense. It did the last 2 years, it made good sense to do that. But after hearing my seatmate define it as robbing Peter to pay Paul, are you suggesting we not rob Peter to pay Paul?
No, I'm not.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm just wondering if that is a philosophical
No,
change.
because we are stuck in that position that if we don't do that, right now, we're in a position, we've got the lowest number of deputy sheriffs per 1,000 population served in the whole state. And we can't add deputy sheriffs because we don't have any revenue. And if we were to cut that diversion, that legal diversion, I would point out, we'd have to lay off some deputies. And I just think that's not acceptable. I do think the big problem lies, if I go to marijuana tax, all the tax that is collected by the state of Washington from Thurston County, and I don't have 2018 numbers, they haven't sunk in yet, but in 2017, out of 14.8 million collected in Washington state, we got 143,000 to do all the regulatory planning, enforcement, everything that went along with marijuana. I think the state is missing the boat on giving the citizens of the state adequate funding to do many things, not just roads. Marijuana is just another example. That we don't get adequate funding to do the job. We are continually being asked to do things without funding. We refer to that as unfunded mandates. And so I'm not willing to continue to nickel and dime the citizens if the state won't look at us and give us adequate resources to do what we need to do for the citizens of the state of Washington driving on roads in Thurston County.
County Manager.
Thank you. And I agree with Commissioner Edwards in terms of the funding mechanisms in which the counties are funded are outdated. We really don't have perhaps the opportunities the cities may have. But also taking back and you as a legislative authority and the obligation that you have. And the obligation that you have, I believe, is looking at all the services that we provide to the county. And looking at all the services we provide to the county, we're diverting right now close to $4 million from the road fund to the diversion to traffic law enforcement and also for other general purpose. And the reason that I'm saying the obligation that you have a legislative authority is until the state law doesn't change to help us or any other mechanism comes along to help us, the obligation that you have to the road fund is also part of your menu, the decision-making process you will be doing on a budget process. So it is complex, it is difficult, and it's all about priorities. But again, I think it's my obligation to the board to have that perspective to you, because your obligation is also not just to the general fund obligation, but also to other funds, because the services that we provide to the county goes beyond the general fund allocation.
Just maybe to finish off, I think everybody that's been around a long time probably can relate to this. Oftentimes, things have to get worse before they get better, before the public maybe takes notice and puts pressure where it needs to be. And I think it's so out of whack the way the counties are treated by the state, that it's unfortunately going to have to get worse before it gets better.
That's it for TBD. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Okay, it is 10:25. The next couple items are probably to be rapidly quick, but it's been 10:25, and I think people deserve a break. So let's take a break, a 10-minute break. Please come back at 10:35. Thank you. this agenda. And next is proclamations and awards. La Bonita Bomar, clerk of the board.
Yes, sir. Thank you. At this time, the proclamation that is in the works for June the 4th is the National LGBTQ Pride Month. I have an original being signed by the Board of County Commissioners, and so as soon as that's signed, I'll go ahead and make copies, and we'll have it ready for our board meeting on the 4th of June.
And we'll be flying the pride flag all week during that week.
Do we have it?
We do.
We do.
Yes,
Perfect.
and I have contacted staff who just picked it up, and we'll have it ready to put up on the pole Monday morning.
And are you looking for attendees?
I am working on attendees. I have been working with someone that will help me get the names and have people come to accept the proclamation.
Okay, because our local P-flag folks, every time a member,
Yes.
they've come the last couple of years, and we can bring
Yes.
them as well if you need. Do you want me to contact them, or are you contacting them?
I'm contacting them.
Okay. Anything?
Nope, that was my suggestion.
No, but
Okay.
if you have somebody that you, on your deal, that you would like to come and be part of that, let us know,
Okay.
obviously.
I'll do that.
Yes, thank you so much.
Anything else regarding, that was a proclamation,
Correct.
and now we got boards and commissions?
Yes,
Do we still, are we still in proclamations? I mean, did we do law enforcement? I'm just wondering if we did that.
I'm sorry.
Did we do law enforcement proclamation for the month of May?
I'd have to look. We had several proclamations in May.
I just don't remember.
I remember
I
sheriff's
remember
being
we
here.
did military.
We did military, but
I'll have to look.
I just don't recall that we did that specifically like we did the year before.
Will you just let us know?
Yeah, I will let you know.
We'll follow up. I think
Yes.
you're correct. We haven't done that yet, so we'll touch base on this.
So advisory boards and commissions.
For advisory boards and commissions, there are no new applications at this time or resignations. Although under the current vacancies, I would like to point out the vacancy for the Citizen Commission for salaries and for elected officials. There are 2 vacancies. These 2 particular vacancies are appointed by the county commissioners. Sometimes they are names are drawn from the auditor's office. They call it drawing by lot. But this time around, you will be making the actual appointments for those 2 positions. Those 2 positions is one from the legal field and one from the business community.
Okay, and as I asked you before, is there a deadline?
No, sir.
Besides ASAP?
No.
Okay, yes.
And is that an at-large position anywhere in the county or district-specific
It
position?
is not at-large or district-specific, commissioner district-specific. The parameters are that they need to be in the legal profession and the business profession.
Do you have a question? And how many sit on that commission, the salary commission?
I believe 9. I have to double check.
And the commission, this commission only appoints 2 of the 9.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that, to answer your question, yes.
And we have no say over what the commission does or their decision-making.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I knew there'd be a yes or no. You want to explain
So
that?
the salary commission has been created, and there's a legislative action by the county which was created, sets the salaries for all the elected officials here in the county. And that recommendation comes to you in 2 forms. Because the salary commission makes recommendations to adjust the salary of the county commissioners. In that instance, you as a county commissioner do not have the option to say A or nay. So, and that recommendation goes through the process and it gets implemented. However, you do have the opportunity to accept, revise, or deny the recommendations for the other elected officials here in the county. So that is the difference between the yes and no.
You know those joke exploding cigars? We tried that last year, I think it was, and it didn't work out so well.
Well, and yeah, last year we we went through a lot of legal review as to the authority that perhaps the county commissioners have in whether accepting or not your own salary revisions. And it was determined that you do not have the option.
We tried to legally not accept an increase in pay and explode in our face, do you? Okay. All right, so we come up with two.
Do you have any?
Did you have more?
No, I guess my only comment is that we have a legal and a business representative that comes from the commissioners. The reason that we only have 2 seats that have any connection to commissioners is so that there's no perception of undue influence over our own salary.
Absolutely.
I'm a lawyer, so if I were to have any role in a legal representative, I'd be taking even one step closer to that bad optical. So I'm going to stay completely. I'm not going to assist in any way in helping to find a legal representative, just because I don't think it'd be appropriate. But
Okay.
I'll look about business representatives and see if I can give assistance there.
Good
Okay.
point.
Thank
Good.
you.
Thank you. Anything, is that it?
That is it.
That's it, thank you. Next on the agenda is PIO check-in, and I bet you got a lot.
I do. Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter,
Good
Public
morning.
Information Supervisor. Just a reminder that there is the panel discussion happening this Thursday from 4 to 6, I know, right? At the Evergreen State College, Purse Hall, Lecture Hall 1. The topic is water, and it's going to be water quantity, quality, and how stormwater is managed in Thurston County. Commissioner Hutchings will be moderating or facilitating the conversation with the panel members Jennifer Walker, our Public Works Director, Shelley Slaughter, our Public Health and Social Services Director, and Joshua Cummings, our Community Planning and Economic Development Director. So we have everything in place for that. The capstone team that I've been working with at Evergreen State College has done a great job. So I'm excited to actually hold the event, and then they'll provide us with an evaluation afterwards of how we can do them better for our following panel discussions.
Can you remind me what capstone is?
It's a group of master's students with Evergreen State College who are doing this project as their capstone. So they're doing their final paper report project on doing this, and it's reaching out, or the government reaching out to citizens and how they're doing that. So
Okay.
does that clarify a little bit?
That'll be fun.
That'll be fun. I'm moving forward with the taping of the informational video for the courthouse project. I got some B-roll this week and some photos for the film, and then we are doing the voiceover with Commissioner Hutchings next Wednesday. So that will be available, and so then it'll just be working on putting it all together. We need to get some interviews with a couple of the judges. I've gotten some quotes from jurors that we'll include in there. So it's moving along, and we're getting there. Long time coming. The web coordinators work group, we met last week to talk about the RFP for going out for a website redesign. So that is moving forward. We're finalizing that and hoping to get that RFP out soon to get some bids on that.
Can I ask on that?
Yes.
So what's the scope of the website redesign?
The scope is basically for us to get a new content management system to redo our entire website. And then to have
Our meaning Thurston County?
Meaning Thurston County.
Across the board?
Across the board.
All the different
That is the goal.
Okay.
Is to have a common look, feel, design, so that when our users come, they know they're at Thurston County, and have it service-driven instead of office department-driven. So people can come and look at how do I do this? They don't have to know that it's in a specific office or department. They just know it's a service that they want to find. And so we can make it easier for our visitors, our users, to come and find information on our website. And so it would be using best practices for current web design and development. And yes.
Just to clarify a little even further, this project is just to have a standardized context of the county's web presence. The content is not a part of this project, meaning the content, it will be up to each individual office and department to manage and own that content of the web page. Because I think it's imperative, at least from my point of view, to have a single context as to where county businesses are conducted. And that is the purpose of this project. we're not taking over any content ability for any office and department. No, that's not the intent of this project. It's just the context.
And that's one of the benefits of a content management system as well, is the level of updating the content is given to the offices and departments. They don't have to go through anyone to get their content updated. They will have access to that. It's just in a template format that means people know when they come to the county website that they're going to see the county website throughout the whole website. But the content is going to be managed by each of the offices and departments.
So including auditor, assessor?
Yep, all of
treasurer,
them.
okay.
Yep, they will have full control over their content. And then finally, Brian is currently working with Commissioner Hutchings on doing a series on civility and politics. And they've been taping that, and that will be a series coming out, I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Not sure, but it's actually not civility in politics. It's just general civility or a lack of. And it'll involve middle school kids, Evergreen State College folks, and members of the community.
So keep an eye out for that. That should be starting up, I believe, late this summer is when the intent is for that to start. It's a series. It's not just a single show.
And when I was in on Friday, there were people from TCM dangling microphones doing a test. And it didn't sound like it worked out so well. Because echoing and the room size and such.
I think that it was a pretty interesting demonstration of how we could have a singular microphone in the middle of the room, so we wouldn't have to have these microphones or the lapels. It would actually just pick up the conversation. The problem with this room is that there's speakers sitting above the microphone, and so it caused a significant amount of feedback. But there is a feedback suppressor, from what I understand. I'm not technical in any way, shape, or form, so if this comes out wrong. But it's supposed to manage that. They didn't have that to demonstrate. So we're going to be asking them to come back and do another demo with the feedback suppressor. It sounded amazing in room 152. It sounded amazing when we had the headphones on, which is what the broadcasting would be. It was just interference with the microphones in this room that was making the screechies and ringing and all of that. So we're hoping that they'll come back and we'll see a different, that will be mitigated, so we'll be able to hear it how it actually would be. And then they have some other software that goes into it that would shadow certain parts of the room. So if we wanted to make it so that it wouldn't pick up on the background noise from the audience, we can set the system up so it wouldn't pick up the background noise and it would just focus on commissioners and staff. And
That's what my next question was, because I understood it was so sensitive, it would pick up sniffling and conversation, and it just keep bouncing around.
So what it does is it has these different beams. There's 28 microphones around the whole system, and then if the dominant person talking, so me talking right now, it would focus that beam on me. There would still be microphones that would catch some muffling, but that's what hopefully the new software would do, is kind of cut that out a little bit. So once that's been implemented, we're going to have them come back and show us again to see if it's something we want to implement in this room. I was rather impressed.
Can we still get the angry door slams? Just to,
Possibly, yeah, to really
wow.
emphasize
just
They're
whenever-
so sensitive, I think it'll pick up the voices in my head. Have.
Do you have any additional questions? for
Anything
me?
else? I don't have any, no. Jerry, anything? Okay. Thank you, Megan.
Commissioner?
Yes, sir.
Related to this matter, the Olympian approached me yesterday, and they're in the process of running another piece related to the homeless emergency ordinance that you may be considering later this week, and particularly related to the potential mitigation site located in Martin Way and Rattle Road. I walked them through as to the status as to where we are, and perhaps some of the steps that needs to be taken before this site can be considered or maybe implemented as a potential mitigation site. Out of this insistence of the Olympian, I'm going to be on site on this Thursday about 12:15. They want to have a videotaping of the same information that I provided over the phone. So I will keep you up to date. I did extend an invitation to the administrative side of the City of Olympia and City of Lacey. Hopefully, my counterparts will be attending that as well. So give you a heads up.
out at Martin and Carpenter?
Yep.
Yeah, I think he said Ruddle or something.
Oh, Carpenter. Thank
said
you.
Ruddle.
Thank you.
Carpenter and
Carpenter.
Martin
That's
Way.
what I meant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Stand corrected. too many road names.
Okay, briefing, public hearing decisions pending, the Squally sub-area plan.
Yeah, you received a briefing this past week, May 15, and Commissioner
No, he was.
But I know about it.
Commissioner Edwards was not in attendance, but I believe Vicky has briefed him on the content of that briefing. So the decision before you is not necessarily on the specifics of the Nisqually sub-area plan. That plan continues on. Staff presented to you with 3 options as to how we going to go about public engagement. As you may recall, you had a public testimony 3 weeks ago from a citizen where he was advocating for you to consider forming a formal advisory committee. And the formal advisory committee is a formal appointment by the board and serves on a specific purpose. And this particular committee will have voting exercise on some of the changes that will be presented to as a result of this staff's work. And that will be referred back to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will go through their process and eventually come to you for your next steps in terms of public hearings and final approval. The other option is the stakeholder format. Is a little bit less formal in a way, but can allow for additional citizens to come and provide their perspective as to how the sub-area plan should be implemented. In this case, there is not a formal appointment, obviously, and at least provides a broader perspective as to how many individuals will come and provide their perspective. And and I can walk you through some of the pros and cons of each one of those here in a minute. And the last option is the open house only format. So the advisory committee may be a 9-member group that will be formally appointed by the board of county commissioners. The stakeholder group, formal meetings, and they will be more flexible as to who comes and participates on those meetings. The open house is just on the specific dates in which staff will go and present the information related to this plan. They gather their information, and that will be as to how we can get public input. And again, in each of those 3 elements, every single recommendation will have to go through the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission have their formal process to how they engage staff, how they engage the public, and as a result, they will put their heads together to provide you with a formal recommendation as to how the plan will be. Back in, I believe in 1982 is when the first update of the Nisqually sub-area plan was put in place. And at that point, the board did appoint an advisory committee. And one of those members is the one who provided public testimony to you that perhaps you may consider doing so the same thing. I believe in this particular case, you can probably see the add-on value of having this advisory committee of having a consistent members. They can probably vet all the different recommendations. So it provides a little bit of consistency. And this is just my perspective, and that's necessarily what staff provided to you. But also in terms of the cons is by you providing a specific appointment to this advisory committee, perhaps may be perceived that you're trying to influence the outcome at the beginning of the public process. And the other 2, and again, the stakeholder format, the consistency may not be there because individuals can come to those meetings, can change the makeup. There's always a group of what I call core stakeholders that will come and provide the flexible, but it's a little more fluid. But also allows for other individuals to come and provide their opinion and their perspective on the specific elements of the plan when they see fit. And lastly, the open house, obviously that's a little what I call looser in terms of public engagement. I think and I believe the recommendation from staff for you to consider going with the stakeholder format, which is currently being practiced by staff at this point. I think I framed the whole issue. Staff is here to answer any questions, and here's a point of how you'd like to proceed on this matter.
Welcome.
And
And
correct
back,
me if
welcome
I
back.
didn't frame that correctly in any shape or form.
No, that was great framing. Thank you. We're here for any questions. Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, Joshua Cummings.
Maya Teeple, Associate Planner with Community Planning.
You have a question or a comment?
I have no questions. I have a comment if anybody wants to know. But
Well, I have a question that no matter what, 1, 2, or 3 option, they all go to the Planning Commission before they come here.
Correct.
Right, I got the hit, yeah. Thank you. So that's kind of like an advisory board anyway.
Well, that's your really official advisory board
Right.
in any matters related to land use.
Right. Okay. Any questions or comments?
No, are we ready to
No.
give direction? Is that it?
Yes,
No,
I'm
we've
looking
got
for
time.
your
I'll make a
direction.
comment.
He's got some
Just-
comments.
I favor the advisory committee because this is extremely delicate area, long history, economic considerations, environmental considerations, agricultural considerations, a lot of water issues. It's not a typical area that, it's got its unique history, and that's why I think you're bringing this forward to us. A lot of competing stakeholders. What I'm concerned about is the commitment to continuous attendance by the key stakeholders. And I understand we have the Planning Commission, but they're not the stakeholders in that area, and I want to see those stakeholders hammer out a compromise amongst themselves, which then the Planning Commission, and if they both come to agreement, then we've got really clear direction. And if they don't agree with the Planning Commission, then we sort of see that it's a very close and difficult question, and the commissioners have that much more information and latitude on which to decide which is the right way to go. So I think there's it wouldn't be something that I would recommend for any area of the county, but this particular area, I think to cap that off, the advice we got at the briefing was that the folks overwhelmingly, I think was the word you used, wanted an advisory group. So there's no reason for me, it's kind of like our Summit Lake thing, there's no reason for me as a commissioner to take away a process that our citizens want to engage in to manage their own neighborhood, essentially, so their own region of the county. So I think there's a good reason to do advisory committee in this instance.
And those 3 options, advisory, stakeholder, or
Open house.
open house. And with stakeholder, you're going to have an open house anyway, aren't you? So, okay. Well, I'm kind of leaning towards the stakeholder.
All 3 options would have open houses.
All 3.
All 3 options have open houses?
Okay.
So the third option, the open house, is only
Only.
open house.
And I agree with my seatmate, Commissioner Menser, in what he was suggesting about having the involvement of the stakeholders. But I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but it seems like you want the stakeholders as part of an advisory board, or advisory commission or board. But the second option of stakeholders still involves stakeholders without the formality of appointments. And staff is recommending stakeholders over the other 2 for management and or logistics or for whatever reason.
So the recommendation that we gave in the briefing previously was either 1 or 2. And both of them, as we've talked about, come with the different timing. So if we do choose option 1, if the board chooses option 1, having an expectation that it will add process and time to the discussion, and that option 2 has a potential for reduction of process and time.
Okay. Got it. And regardless, they each have stakeholder group. They have the stakeholders involved.
Yeah.
And it still
Yes.
goes to the Planning Commission regardless before it comes here.
Yes, so staff will take whatever information comes out of either one, all of those options, and present it to the Planning Commission.
Okay.
But to the original point of the county manager, the advisory board is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and they will have to show up and participate. stakeholders are not appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and they could change and fluctuate. But the information that staff receives will all be put together by staff and presented to the Planning Commission.
And if it is an advisory board, does that create, or how much more time does that create staff involvement?
And that is a lot dependent upon the advisory board discussion and the process. In the briefing, we said that just the process piece of it would likely add 3 to 5 months. But again, that's if the advisory board is sailing along and there's no conflict or confusion or frustration, and whatever discussions come out of that could extend that time.
So it could add 3 to 5 months.
It will, at the very least,
Well, it will.
add 3 to 5 months.
Okay.
But potentially
There is a
more.
table, I just point out on the back of the briefing with actual hours, staff hours estimates.
Thank you.
Okay.
Since you guys went to the work, put that together, make sure we see it.
Yeah.
It's page, here, you can take mine.
What's that one look like in the front, though?
It's from our briefing last week.
Okay, oh, good. Let me just, what did I bring here? That's something different, okay. Thank you. Anything, you have anything else?
Well, I guess the advisory sounds like it's going to take more time on staff's part. And it kind of, the perception could be that we've got our thumb on the scale, so to speak, just because we're making those appointments. So I guess I'm more in tune with two stakeholders.
So you're looking for a thumbs up then?
Yes, I'd like for direction from the board.
So how many would like option 1, which is the advisory board, advisory committee, advisory board? And let me do the open house. Anybody want the open house?
We're going to get it anyway on all of them.
Well, we
Right.
will, that's true. And then that remains, that leaves the
stakeholder
stakeholder
forum.
group.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Maya. Commissioner items. Oh, look at that, point in time count. We finally got there. Oh, look, it's lunchtime, sorry. Welcome, Anna.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning, and Keely. Before we jump in, do you go ahead and identify yourself, please, or introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good morning, County Commission. My name is Anna Schlecht. I am the Community Service Manager at the City of Olympia, but I'm here today as a coordinator of the 2019 point-in-time homeless census.
Keely Marino, Public Health and Social Services, Affordable Housing, and all the homeless stuff coordinator.
So this will be a good discussion.
Yes.
Or chat.
And I have to start off by saying I started the week by wearing orange, or rather dusty peach, kind of like Commissioner Mentzer's shirt yesterday. I actually started with the City of Olympia nearly 38 years ago, hired into the Public Works Department. And I'm still here after all that time, not in Public Works though. So today you're going to receive a briefing, a high-level briefing about the results of the point-in-time census. You received a number of materials. We are still in the process of developing that report, so some of these are noted as draft and some of the numbers might change slightly. But if I can run through a couple of the materials, starting with the bar chart diagram. If you flip it around and look at the, looks like 3-colored jello, as my mother would say. This represents the 14 years that we have been conducting the point-in-time census here in Thurston County and across the state and the United States. It's our way of looking at who's homeless and why. You'll see that in the year 2006, we found 441 homeless folks in our local county. And while we started with the goal of eliminating homelessness, we realized that this was going to be a pretty tough issue to tackle. So then we recalibrated our goal to reduce it by half. So in all these 14 years, our goal has been to get down to 221 homeless folks. As you'll see from this chart, we have not gotten anywhere near there. There was a spike in 2010, which mirrors the height of the recession when we found 976 homeless folks. It came down with the recovery. There's a couple of outlier years there that were affected by different circumstances. And then it's been rising sharply the last couple years. And from our analysis, that appears to correlate with the rise of rents. In particular, in the final report, we'll have a section that deals with data that we have from Thurston Regional Planning Council, which shows that rents on average have increased $200 per month per unit, which has a corresponding impact on the rise of homelessness, being widely cited by sources including Zillow.com, recognize that the cost of housing directly affects homelessness. Some of your questions will probably go to the fact of, are we turning the tide? We dropped about 4% from last year, from 835 to 800. Keely Marino and I will both address that a little bit later. We believe that from a more of an anecdotal perspective or just a visual, it appears that homelessness has increased far more than what's represented. And we believe that this count represents those who are willing to participate in the count. In an exit poll of our census workers, we learned that about 50% of the unsheltered people they approached were willing to do the census. What all of that means, we can't conclusively say. Refusal rate is very hard to capture statistically, but I think few Americans want to be in a government database. It's kind of a shared value that we have. And it may also reflect some of the challenging relationship that unhoused, unsheltered people feel with the city of Olympia, because we are the location of some of the highest visibility camps, and we have been engaging in actions that have not made our unsheltered population that happy. So Keely will talk more about that. On the front, we have something that we call our snapshot that gives you some of the salient points. About 12% of the census was unaccompanied youth and young adults. That's young people not old enough to sign their own lease out on their own. They really have no resources. About 52% are female, 7% were veterans. We increased this year 32%, nearly a third of our homeless population is identified as people of color, whereas our county population, sorry I don't have the stat, but I believe that it is about 18% of the overall population that identifies as people of color. We're seeing an increasing number of people reporting that they've been homeless for more than a year. This has been growing over since 2006. About 70% say they've been homeless for longer than a year. The other thing is, let's see, job loss and eviction is the primary cause of homelessness. And of the physical conditions that people report they're facing, over half, 55%, report mental illness as either the cause of their homelessness or a condition that they're facing. Another document that I have presented to you, and yes, I do love paper. Sorry the numbers are so tiny, but if you spend time looking at this chart that's titled Trends in Thurston County Homelessness 2006 to 2019, you can drill down into some of the demographics of homelessness and understand a little bit more about what is happening with folks. The very bottom line shows that since the year 2006, we have more than doubled the number of people who are chronically homeless, people who have a compounding physical disability that is, along with their homelessness, makes it very difficult for them to get back into housing. So I think I will wrap up by going to more of a national level. I gave you a very thick report, which is titled the 2018 Annual Homeless Assessment Report, or the AHAR. We speak in acronyms here in government. Page 14 is a rather grim presentation of what's been happening in our nation. You'll see that the West Coast has the highest rates of homelessness. While this doesn't match our local numbers, the dark blue represented in the map on page 14 shows that approximately 1 in 200 people are homeless on the West Coast. We have not had time to work through our data to really get to the bottom of that, but it seems to correlate directly with increased rents and perhaps warmer climates and other issues that we can only speculate on at this time. But with the exception of the state of Massachusetts and New York, all of the highest concentrations of homelessness are along the West Coast. So With that, I think I will turn to Keely Marino, our Thurston County Homeless Coordinator, who I also look forward to passing this project on to in 2020.
Before we get too far from Anna's
Yeah.
presentation, going back to this sheet here, what percentage did you say, Anna, is the job loss and eviction?
And I just crunched this out last night. I don't have the total percentage, but that was the highest reported cause. So of 800 people, the majority of them reported that job loss and eviction or economic concerns were what caused their homelessness.
Okay, just the majority, okay. I didn't know if I missed a percentage in there or not. Got it, thank you.
So, good morning. The point-in-time count is universally controversial in the ways it does or does not capture folks experiencing homelessness. As Anna mentioned, oftentimes people who are unsheltered can be system shy, or they don't wish to disclose their personal information to be put into a governmental database. For example, many years ago, 2015, for the point-in-time count, actually Anna Schlecht and I worked together for a youth count. So we put together this event to attract young people experiencing homelessness, to encourage them to incentivize filling out the form. So we did a wonderful event, and there were many, like over 200 hot dogs were served that day, and we got 33, I believe it's 33 forms filled out by young people. 6 months later, we performed another youth count in the summertime, and it was an anonymous survey for the city of Olympia, and we had 76 forms come in, largely because it was a questionnaire that only had 6 questions versus the number of questions on the point-in-time count form, and also because folks could be anonymous, they didn't have to identify themselves. So that's always a stumbling block in terms of actual counting of the point-in-time count. Also, the definition of homelessness by HUD is very specific and then exclusionary to people who may be doubled up, couch surfing, or in other ways unsheltered but sheltered. So various other systems such as the McKinney-Vento has a much broader and more liberal definition of what constitutes a person being homeless versus HUD. So that also impacts the count. And I think that's about it.
Well, if I can share something that Keely and I have developed in looking at these numbers, across the nation, it's widely accepted that the point-in-time count captures about half of your unsheltered population. At the time of the census, I could have easily counted 394 people just walking from one end of downtown Olympia to the other. We had a number of unsanctioned camps. Through anecdotal reports about conflicts between neighbors and businesses and camps that are in wooded areas throughout the Olympia area, we found that there were quite a few more camps. We got reports of similar situations in Lacey and Tumwater and Yelm. And I feel confident stating that we can estimate that there's approximately 1,000 unsheltered people in our urban hub area. So that is a lot of folks. Another part of corroborating, although anecdotal information, data on this is that we in Olympia are facing increased conflicts, and how do we manage the conflicts between these citizens? And that's becoming an issue, I believe, in the cities of Lacey and Tumwater and parts of rural Thurston County. So it's not just a matter of finding out who's homeless and why. How do we develop the best possible services, accommodations? It's also starting to deal with the conflicts that arise between competing needs.
I just thought of another complaint about the point-in-time count and the process is that it is a one-day count. It's a snapshot. It is in the middle of the coldest time of the year, and so many folks that aren't big fans of the point-in-time count point that out is not necessarily the greatest time to be out counting unsheltered individuals. Also, it's only at certain times of the day if folks are going out into encampments. So there's crews of folks going out into encampments and trying to engage folks who may be living there to fill out the form for the point-in-time count. And they may not be there. They could be working. They could be accessing services. They could be at that moment not at their campsite. So there's a video that was produced on the Olympian website that showed empty campsites. And that's doesn't necessarily mean that they're not occupied, but rather the occupants were just not there at that particular moment in time.
So I could talk and talk about these issues and cite numbers, but I think the larger trends are what we really want to look at. You know, what are we facing as people in local government? What are we facing, you know, as people who are compassionate? What are we facing as people who also feel that we have to have accountability and balance in our public investments in the needs of our citizens? But if I may open this for questions, comments?
Certainly. Do you have any questions, comments?
Just that if you're trying to convince, you know, I mean, the unsheltered number is the highest it's ever been. So from my perspective, you don't need to convince me that we've turned a corner or that we're solving this problem. Well, obviously not. I mean, based on visuals and then the numbers, even the numbers right here that you've explained a lot of the different methodological challenges. But even with those challenges, we still have the highest number of unsheltered folks that we've ever had in this point in time. So obviously we have a ton of work to do. So.
Where these folks are from is where I'm going to focus on. And in the past, it's kind of been 20% are from elsewhere, 80% are from Thurston County. I see on this, now you've got 54% are from Thurston County and 46% are from elsewhere. And my question is, how did you confirm where these people were from, other than them just saying, oh yeah, I'm from Thurston County?
Well, first, participation in the census is voluntary unless you're in a shelter or transitional housing program. If you're in a formal program, your data is collected. Unsheltered people can say, no, thank you. So this is self-reported, and I think that some of the concerns that Keeley referenced may apply to that, but we are seeing a smaller and smaller percentage of Thurston County residents being represented in the census. Again, it's hard to know all of why that exists. I mean, when you look at the map on page 14 of the National Homeless Assessment, it would suggest that there is some migration to the West Coast. I like to pride myself on having chosen this community 40-some years ago because I believed it was a more humanitarian place than the place I originally was from. And it's hard to know why people come here. Of the data that we have, again, it's anecdotal, but the data that we have from our downtown Olympia ambassadors, who probably have some of the deepest relationships with the unsheltered population, what they share is that 80% of the houseless people that they talk to who are from other states come here not to come and sit on a curb in downtown Olympia, not to try to get into a shelter in Lacey. They come because they are hopeful. They're coming to the West Coast, they're coming to Olympia, they're coming to Lacey, they're coming to Tumwater because they are hopeful to find a job. They typically come for a family relationship, you know, somebody who will host them as they try to get back on their feet, and they're not successful in that. But I think that's a good question to drill down on. We need to understand more, but wherever they come from, they are now our citizens. One of the things that social service providers often do is a pop quiz on how many people are from Thurston County, and very, very few people raise their hands. I can't, I'm from Wisconsin. So it's a tough issue.
I guess my concern with that is that the unverifiable process that goes into this. I have been talking to police officers that are interacting with the homeless folks, and when there's a police interaction, then there's generally a positive identification that goes with this. I contend that about 20% of these folks are from Thurston County, and about 80% are from elsewhere. Exactly opposite of what was talked about over the last few years. And I am finding that to be more true than ever as time goes on. I know you're not supposed to give them money, but I've been giving them money on occasion when I stop to talk to them. because that opens up a person's ability to respond to you. If they don't know me from Sikkim, they don't know I'm on the Board of Health or the Board of County Commissioners or anything. You know, I'm fortunate and I can give a few dollars, but and that gets them talking. Very, very seldom do I ever run into somebody from here. It's somebody from elsewhere that is here because this is a easy place to be. We are compassionate. We end up enabling because we are so compassionate. And I contend there is only so much room in the lifeboat, and we cannot continue to fill it up, even with the ordinance that we're talking about. If we move people from downtown Olympia and put them out in the county, it's going to create a void in downtown Olympia. If they do not change their philosophy on dealing with these individuals, then I contend they're just going to keep coming. And I do have an example, and maybe if you want, you can take this back with you, but this is a downtown business in which for 2 weeks, this was about the first part of May, 2 weeks, businesses in this particular area on Capitol Way wanted to get rid of a individual parked in a parking spot. Nothing was ever done about that individual. So the business people took it on themselves to go out and take a picture of a parking enforcement officer giving a citizen parked in front of a business a parking ticket. Now, the parking enforcement officer has no idea if that person has been there 10 minutes or 2 hours as far as over parked. But they certainly know that right directly 50 feet away is this obstruction, because it's not really a trailer. It's kind of like a trailer. It looks like a little living quarters. That thing has been sitting there 2 weeks. And yet, this citizen ends up getting a parking ticket. I'm contending that as long as that type of treatment of these individuals, which I call special treatment, I think they're going to keep coming. I think if citizens are going to get a ticket, the person 50 feet away with his piece of equipment, he should also get a ticket, get hauled away, whatever it takes. I know that's kind of hardcore, but the reality is we cannot continue to keep enabling. And if we don't change the philosophy here, I can tell you the businessman, one of the people that I'm talking to down here, caught people in his building, burglaring his building. He's had a lot of theft, burglary. Come to find out, that particular case was dismissed for no reason given by the Serving Crime Victims in Thurston. So this is Crime Victims Advocacy Network. I do, one of the paragraphs, I do not have any knowledge as to why this case was dismissed. If you have questions about this, you can contact you. So the public is very upset about this. I'm concerned we're going to create a void and more people are going to come. So until that philosophy is adjusted, I can't see, talking with the citizens in the unincorporated area, and we happen to be their only representation, I can't see how we can continue this enabling. So I want to help, but I want to help those that are from here that we can help and discourage others from coming here at the same time. I know that kind of doesn't match up with compassion very well, but it's reality. There is only so much room in the lifeboat. So,
Go ahead, Anna.
Well, a couple of responses. The City of Olympia is conducting a number of community outreach efforts, and the things that we're hearing the most from our community, and this comes directly from people who are living or have businesses immediately adjacent to camps, is that the two most important values they have, there's a third, we haven't completely sussed that out, but the two most important values are compassion and accountability. They want balance. And I think that we have, in all bodies of government, and I would suggest jurisdictions besides Olympia have a responsibility in that department to really engage and figure out what is the balance. The second point, your reference to law enforcement engagement, we hear from the Olympia Police Department a very similar story that when they are responding to people who are camped in various places, either by looking at where their car was licensed or where their last driver's license is from, that they are from out of state. That is a fact. And, but again, I would like to look deeper into that data. Does that represent 25 out of the 394 unsheltered people? I mean, what's the proportion? I mean, of those people that are engaging with law enforcement, that's a subset of the overall homeless population. I can tell you without divulging this person's name that somebody that was very near and dear to my heart is now homeless. Not unlike me in terms of demographics. Same height, same build, same age, same educational background. This woman is homeless. There's a number of other issues that you touched on. The issue of ticketing is a very big issue that we are grappling with at the City of Olympia. It would be worthy of further study, but there was a state of Washington legal precedent in which a judge determined that a person's vehicle fell under the Homestead Act. Therefore, you can't take a person's house under the Homestead Act. Neither can you take their car. We're in uncharted territories in local government as far as what we can and cannot do, and it's a county-wide conversation that we all have to continue. The last thing I'd like to say about enabling. This issue is very personal to me. I try not to cry when I say this, but I had an uncle, my father's youngest brother, served in Korea, and he probably was a disturbed young man when he went. Korea was a very tough war, and he came back a mess. He served his country, and his country failed him. He suffered with PTSD. He never went further than 100 miles from where he was born. In those days, there was nothing for him. He tried to get odd jobs. He tried to do what he could. Eventually, my brothers and a couple of other people in our extended family went and tackled him out of the homeless camp he was living in and got him into a VA hospital where he died 6 months later. I don't think there's one face that represents homelessness. I think many of us have our touchstones of the people that we think of. Are there people who come here from other states? Sure. Are there people who are not interested in working a program? Most likely. Are there a lot of children, domestic violence victims, veterans of foreign wars, people with severe mental illness, drug and alcohol conditions that they use to self-medicate? Yes. It's a very tough topic, and my personal feeling is that the more we work, city, county, all the different cities together, I don't think that we have the answers we need now, but we need to find ways to accommodate people because they are most definitely among us. They are our citizens. So, and I do think that your views are held by a wide range of people. I don't know that we have all the data to support, the different perspectives at play in this. But that is the point of doing the census, of finding out who's homeless and why. In the year 2020, if I can pitch a concept that I keep throwing to Keely, and she hasn't quite caught it yet. It's kind of like I'm throwing a bouquet at a wedding. She's just like, she's not grabbing it. We are hoping that the county, once again, will lead a countywide effort and that every city will step up to the plate and do an exhaustive census in their own community and find out who among their own citizens are grappling with this. My sense is that it's a pretty equal opportunity representation across the board, and whether people are captured in the census or not is not exactly a true measure of what we're dealing with. So, did you have a point?
Finish? We're gonna run out of time, and we want to get on board too. Is it real quick though?
It's real
Is it real quick? Okay.
This has culminated in rural America now, over, I think it was off of 66, just south of Black Lake. Last week, a citizen had to shoot one of these homeless people in his house. I'm sure that homeless person was mentally disturbed, on drugs, whatever, but as we disperse the population out into the community that has less protection, we have the lowest number of police officers per thousand served than any county in the state of Washington. And yet, if we move these people out into the unincorporated area, keep pushing them out, create a void here in Olympia, we're going to have additional problems. And it's not fair to that citizen that he had to shoot somebody in his house to protect himself, an elderly person. So,
Okay.
I'm curious about children, because the statistics that you have here aren't really, they're not organized the way I've seen them in previous years. So it says 12% unaccompanied youth and young adults. That goes up to age what? What are you considering young adult?
Actually, that stat, and we just got the data download from the state on Friday, and we have been entertaining state auditors in my office, so I haven't had as much time to work on this. That represents people 17 and under. There's 95 individuals, 17 and under.
Okay, and then 34, but then that's only if they're unaccompanied. Then we have 34% households with children, but we don't know the number of children in that, embedded in that.
We have not had time to crunch those numbers
But we can
yet.
get those numbers?
We will have those numbers
Because I'm
for you.
really curious about the number of under 18 folks, whether they're with parents or not parents.
Sure.
Because last year I remember it was 30%. And that statistic went a long way as I was talking to people about enabling and attracting people from other parts. The reason that that statistic matters to me is because those folks, that 30% last year and whatever it is this year, are not moving across the country to come to Olympia. They're not they're not doing drug, well, some of the youth might be, but they're not making the kind of choices that I think the community gets upset about. As you point out, there are so many different faces to the population, and trying to focus on one segment of that is just not useful, in my opinion. And so whenever I hear, because Commissioner Edwards' point of view is held by a lot of the community. I heard it campaigning, but when I was able to drill down into the broad, to statistics, almost 99% of all the people I talked to, their attitude changed when they found out that 30% or more of these of our homeless population are children. So I just think it's important to understand that it's whether they came from New York or Hawaii or Lewis County. If there's a child who is in our community that is unsheltered and is in school, we have 1,700 in the North Thurston School District alone, I think, or no, that's all the school districts, but that's just, I'm sorry that that's the case, but we have to handle it. And it's not even about compassion, it's just about human decency or just basic governance of a community. I mean, I can't have children who are unsheltered and trying to get to school. I don't care where they came from. So.
And we'll be presenting more of that data in the full report. We were told we had 15 minutes. It's a lot to cover. Thank you.
maybe we can do this again.
I've got a few minutes, or a few questions. Do you have any more? No. These are pretty easy, really. You talked about, Anna, that you could count however many it was walking from one end of downtown to the other, and you referred to the downtown ambassadors, and everybody knows that the majority of homeless are in the downtown core. How do you define the downtown core? Because as a police officer for 27 years, it was the downtown core was either 5th or 6th up to the water, and from Plum Street over to the bridges is the downtown core.
That's accurate.
Is that the same area that the ambassadors serve in that, or maybe it's even a smaller area?
It is that area.
Okay, so that's the downtown core, not 8th and Plum or the old City Hall.
Correct.
Okay, and this says draft. Is there other drafts, and when will this cease to become a draft and become a final?
We need at least a week to crunch the numbers and double check them, but we will have a set of information that we send out by email so people can click through the different reports. We'll be making paper copies available. To your point, there's some very rich data from the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, OSPI, and that data is kind of stunning when you think about how many homeless kids are going to school and expected to matriculate, graduate, go on with their lives. North Thurston is the highest concentration. I believe it's, please don't quote me on this, but I believe 6% of their student body is homeless. That's a lot.
And the point in time count was done in January?
January 24th.
And here it is almost the end of May. Is that typically how long it takes? I don't think, there was an extended delay this time, wasn't there?
Last year, we had a fire-breathing statistician who worked with us, and she just jumped down that data well, and she came up, with 3% margin of error, and so we released that very quickly. This year, we were not able to rehire that person, but we had another really great staff person, but we had to wait till the state released the data, and they released it after 5 o'clock last Thursday.
So the state
My
took
staff
that
person's last day was mid-afternoon last
good
Thursday,
grief.
so it's been a
Okay.
struggle.
And I understand the city of Olympia, the city council will be looking at this tonight? Or-
No, it's, Keely and I will be visiting them on June 4th.
Okay, June 4th, that's all I have. Any further? Any further?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Ton of
much.
work and information. Did you have anything, Romero? Did you have anything for this? Okay. Thank you. Now we're moving on to the quarterly budget amendment follow-up.
Yeah.
Is there time?
Well,
20 minutes?
maybe what we could do is, I already have scheduled for you next Tuesday morning. It's going to be only 2 items for you next Tuesday morning. It will be for you to review the agenda of the following week, that will be June 4th. And then the rest of the morning will be on the budget amendment. And at that point, we'll go item by item.
Perfect.
And I will ask you to provide thumbs up or thumbs down at that point. What I was hoping
Go ahead.
What I was hoping to do today is briefly go through this. I don't think I have enough time to see if you have any questions. I'm not asking you to make a decision at this point. We already reviewed some of the items in here. I can start from the capital, and I will ask if you have any comments on the capital budget amendments. Remember, most of the capital budget amendments are what I call transitional processes, meaning the projects were not able to be finished last year, and we're just bringing those to follow up in this year, and that comes with revenue. None of the capital projects perhaps have an impact on the general fund. So on your packet, the first report is the capital, and the revenue change in 2019 on the capital is $5,495,000. And the expenditure change on 2019 is $7,123,000. Moving on to the revenue change on 2020, Michelle, can you come out? Yes, please come. Is $1,455,000, and the expenditure change is $1,650,000. So the option that I have for you is, do you want me to go through item by item on the capital again, if you have any questions, or move on to the general fund
Right now, we're on Tuesday.
right now? Because I'd like to capture if you have any questions,
Okay.
and we'll bring the answer to your questions on Tuesday morning.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
So, just so we're on the same page,
What page are you on, sir?
well,
This-
I
The last
don't mean,
one.
I mean the same
The last
rhetorical,
Rhetorical
Seven.
page.
Okay.
not the
So
same
we're singing the
exact
same
page.
tune.
And we went through capital, we went through
We went
some
through-
percentage of the other operating, but we didn't finish.
So we went through the capital entirely.
Yeah.
We went through the whole general fund as well. And then we were probably halfway through the other funds.
Right.
Yeah, we were up to like 77.
Right.
Ish out of another 116 out of that group. So and Commissioner Edwards wasn't there, although I
So,
don't know if
so
Did he
that's
get a
what I'm
briefing?
I'm
Yes.
proposing those options, but I believe he has been briefed by
Yes.
Vicky as well as Robin.
okay, okay.
And
So now we're at the same point, basically.
Right.
Could I just mention something? If you feel rushed, that's exactly what I feel all the time. So I mean, if that's where you're going, so.
I'm just trying to figure out how to sensibly cover what's, because I mean, it's like, I haven't even, from my perspective, I haven't even heard the full list yet.
okay, so
So
we
to
can
double
start.
back on capital, I mean, if that's the best use of 20 minutes, okay. But I'm not even gonna think about yet, thumbs up and thumbs down, and
Yep,
I haven't
no,
even gone through
no,
the
at this
list.
point, I'm not asking you to go through that process yet. So maybe you can start at 78 on the operating.
What page are you on?
That will be page number 15, is labeled operating on the right-hand, lower right-hand corner.
Boy, it's beneficial to have pages on the page numbers. Have I mentioned that before?
Yes,
We were on 77, item 77.
70, I thought it was 76, but okay. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, we're on 17, and what item?
With this.
76, page 15.
15.
Yeah.
Okay. Right there. Okay,
Page 15.
got it.
Page 15, item 76. Are you there?
Yeah.
That is related to the JAG grant. As you may remember, there was an item above, they included the revenue. So this is the expenditure line of the JAG grant. And I'm going to move rather quickly. If you have any questions, please stop me. Public health, they are requesting for you to consider funding the Nurse Family Partnership Program. Is one of the nurses that has been currently being unfunded. And that has a $49,000 impact on 2019 and $101,919 in 2020. And again, all these items are not general fund. In this case, is Fund 1500, which is the Public Health and Social Services Fund.
That's a decrease.
Decrease. Yeah, because we're going to be funding other positions on a different fund. Yeah.
And that's not a sensitive mic that'll pick up your voices, so having it in the middle is not going to be sufficient. Thank you.
So we're decreasing expenditure there because the money's coming somewhere else?
From a different fund, which we'll touch base down the line on. Right? Yeah.
I don't believe so. I believe they are just realigning positions in this nurse family partnership program. They're just moving some positions around. I don't know the exact specifics.
Yeah.
I know we've got a very complicated budget to go over, $310 million or something, but I'm confused most of the time, but it really confuses me when staff is confused. It doubles that confusion. So, because I kind of depend on staff to give us the right information. So, and therein lies the problem why I am always concerned about doing everything so fast and in such a short period of time. Where can we get the time? I don't know. I'll come in on Saturdays and Sundays if I need.
So the Achilles heel on this is me, to be honest with you. So I'm trying to move forward and give you the best answers.
Well, I mean,
but
you've got a
you're the
lot on your
experts.
plate too.
We'll need to look up every request. We're only, there's only so much room on each report, and there's only so many facts we can keep in our head regarding the 40 funds. So we can look up each request and go through the documents. If we have the time, we're happy to do that with you, but it is extremely time consuming.
So do you have questions on this item? We'll come back next week.
That was your question.
Well, I don't have questions on this particular item because it's a priority item for me on the nurse partnership.
But do you have questions? We'll bring and answer those questions you may have. That's what I'm asking. If you have any questions,
No,
we'll bring
I
the
don't.
answer to your
Yeah,
questions
and I
next
don't.
week.
I don't
We
on
don't
this one.
always have all the facts. We're private data and the public health.
Item
You
78.
have questions on it that they can come back with?
Well, it sounds like, I mean, if it was a new position, I would be, why are we doing this at this juncture? But it sounds like it's just reshuffling money for funding an existing position. So I'll keep that in my head and I'll.
Commissioner, it's actually 4 positions to where they're saying they're not going to change the client service, but they have part-time positions that they want to make full-time. So they're reducing the number of FTE in total with a reduction in this particular fund to provide more full-time staff to do the work. It's kind of a long explanation, but there's actually 4 positions that get touched by this request. and the department has said that this will help them provide better service.
The tricky part, and we got into this at the
Yeah.
last meeting, is that when you have these separated out, I can't actually see the true economic financial impact because the additions here and then the subtraction is 5 pages over, and unless
Right.
somebody's connecting the dots, I don't know if I'm spending money or I'm saving money. Or
Right, and there's gonna be, Robin has the general fund piece where you can see that, and then I'm gonna spend some time to see if we can sort this differently, that maybe you see, some of these, they're on the same page, they're a couple lines apart, but maybe we can match them up better so you could go, here's the in and here's the out, and then that is zero. This is a new report that we were able to get out of Questica, as opposed to Teresa doing it all by hand.
There's not an offsetting line for this. This is the line, there's only one line.
So we saved $50,000 by this shuffle. Okay.
On Fund
helpful.
1500.
What?
On Fund 1500.
Okay.
So the line item 78, that is also reduction on the 1500 fund, but it's also a transfer to the treatment sales tax. And we just went through the treatment, not just last week, the sales tax, TST, that has a revenue component to that as well. Okay. Item 79. That is gets into Public Works. This is related to Delphi Road. This is a change in expenditure, and that is related to line item 6 on the capital report. So I'm trying to, hopefully I can give you that connection. And the capital report is here, and that will be line item number 6 as to how that relates, because that's where you see the revenue and expenditure component. That will be
16?
on the
on capital report.
capital report. That will be page number 2.
2, okay.
And you can refer on the right-hand side. You have the number items on right column, right column of the report. On the
Yes,
right
yeah.
column.
Okay, great call,
Yes.
got it.
On the right column. So I'm sorry. On the left column, you have the number of items.
And this was already planned for expenditure,
Right.
right?
This is moving from one year to another.
Because of winter weather or whatever, okay.
So item number 80, is an increase in expenditure from the real estate excise tax. Is the same as the Delphi Road, so also associated with line item 6 of the capital.
How,
Okay.
I do have a question.
Yeah, yeah.
How come we're using real estate excise tax on that particular project? I think of that as being able to use that on other capital projects, but why are we using it on roads?
So let me take you back to the board's decision that you made last year to fund the memorial wall in Tenino.
Yes.
And the way you decided to do this, you had the road fund contributing towards that wall, and you brought back, to compensate for that, real estate excise tax.
To fill it in.
I kind of remember that now. I don't know if Ty's gonna be able to catch that.
And just to make, it seems like every item has a story.
2018, I didn't do it. I'm never worried about
I
it.
know, but then to make it fit, you didn't do it, and you're still gonna make it fit.
Not culpable.
Okay.
Okay. 81?
Yeah. And if you have any questions, please let me know. We'll bring the answers to your questions next week. Line item number 81, that's the transportation impact fees. And in this case, the change in revenue. And that's also related to an operating transfer to fund the study of the traffic impact fees. Remember, we touched base, there's 2 needs of a study, the traffic impact fees and the park impact fees. This is for the traffic impact fees. And in the offsetting line item is the one below, which is the expenditure side. Okay. The next is related to the Independence Road flood study carryover funding. Again, that's carry over the revenues in expenditures from 2018 into 2019. 84,39,000. That is a carryover request to fund the safety improvement plan. This is an additional revenue. There is not a carryover, so there's additional expenditure, meaning.
And what does that mean, safety improvement?
So we're in the process of developing a county-wide safety improvement plan that will tell us what elements in the roadway system we need to do in terms of safety.
Oh, okay, could I ask a question about that, sir? I get complaints from constituents in rural America all the time that
That's a big district.
it's a big district.
Rural
And
America.
what they're complaining about is those cuts in the roadway.
Rumble strips?
Rumble strips that make a lot of noise, and it doesn't seem like those end up in very good places. And when I say good places, because there might be a residence right here, and it ends up with a rumble strip there. So that party has to continually live with as cars are going over it. And I wonder if that's conducive to good country living, or if it's just trying to make people aggravated about living in the country so they'll move into town.
I disagree with that approach.
Okay, well, so what can we
this
do
is
to
related-
alleviate that?
This is a safety improvement.
I know.
So in the reason of the rumble strips is you put rumble strips on areas of county roads where vehicles tend to veer outside of the roadway, the lane.
Well, I'm talking about coming up on a stop sign or coming up on a corner.
Now,
That's where there's a lot of, that's where the aggravation
coming
is.
to a stop sign, it will be unlikely, Commissioner.
No, I've got a lot of them out there.
So it will be on curbs. Obviously, when vehicles
Yes.
are tended to veer off the road, that's when we put rumble strips.
Well, rumble strips on the side of the road, completely
Yeah,
different
and
than what I'm talking
we
about.
have side of the road and center line on both. We put on both areas of the road. And one is to prevent vehicles to crossing the center line, and the other one is preventing vehicles to getting onto the ditch.
Where are you
No.
talking about, where they come up on the stop sign?
I'm talking about prior to a corner, there is generally 3 different segments all the way across the driving lane.
Oh, you talk about those are plastic stripe. That's the striping on the
Oh,
road.
no, these are grooves in the road that make a lot of noise. And I know it's all about safety, but at some point, we could have everybody drive 5 miles an hour and people wouldn't get hurt too bad, but they wouldn't get anywhere either.
So
where do we draw the line?
Well, maybe we can have a briefing related to safety improvements on this. I don't think we can resolve your concerns on this
No,
line
probably
item.
not today, but when we do talk about safety improvements and expending a lot of money, well, maybe we need to kind of set priorities. Okay, let's not do this particular project because the benefit not only aggravates the citizens, but it really maybe isn't quite necessary, except for everything we do is the lowest common denominator. We try to protect people that have no sense whatsoever. Somewhere we have to get away from that and let people take their chances that when they come up to a corner, they know it's a corner. When they come to a stop sign, they know it's a stop sign. We can't do everything for everybody all the time.
See,
So that took us
maybe
5 minutes on one item.
It just did, yeah. And we can do, like you say, a follow-up with a safety improvement briefing or something.
So
We'll talk about that.
the plan will come to you as a briefing, and the plan will come to you for final approval. At that point is where you will see what the safety plan is planning to do.
But could you at least include that discussion in that safety plan?
Yeah.
Sir, thank you.
Certainly is going to be discussed.
Okay.
I'm trying. We can't hear you. I'm sorry, Teresa. No.
No.
It's not
It
for me,
is
it's the people
included
watching on
in the
TV.
transportation improvement plan. So do you guys hear that? Do you get a briefing on that plan?
Yeah. So the TIP has been briefed to you just about in September of every year. And that's where you have the opportunity to go through that and determine what projects are included in that.
You're former Public Works, so confirm or deny, is it a scheme to get people to move out of the county?
No, that's not the case, Commissioner.
Okay.
No, I don't want to answer about the skiing, but, you know, this has a safety
I
purpose.
just throw that
Thank
in.
you,
People
thank
are
you.
very upset about it, and I feel
And this is a
right too, so-
carryover item from
Okay.
2018.
Are we going on to 17? We have 5 minutes to noon.
Yeah.
Let's hurry
So,
up.
the next item is item 85. This is the real estate excise tax, $650,000. That's carrying over the revenue from the real estate excise tax 1 to fund some of the activities on the courthouse safety improvements.
Can you explain that?
That is the
This is a
courthouse
car-
building 3.
So this is
Justice.
additional funding, 650,000 to an existing capital projects to where we take building 3, move the probation officers, clean it up. You've seen the other side in the capital on line 22. This is the real estate piece of it. But Central Services is asking for $650,000 more because the project is more expensive.
And that project, what it's going to do, as you may remember, we're going to be adding a small courtroom for district court. And that is included on your, as Michelle stated, line item 22 of the capital project.
And that's the roof and HVAC. It's all of that.
It's all that, is the HVAC, the roof that is leaking, as well as including a new small courtroom for district court. And as a result of including a new courtroom for district court, we need to relocate the probation officers that are currently located in that area. And if you walk into that building, building 3, on the left-hand side is the sheriff's office, on the right-hand side is district court. Right on the left-hand side, there's some offices. Right there's where we plan to remodel to include a new courtroom.
Okay.
Thank you.
Item 86 is an additional expenditure request of $148,000, and this is coming from the transportation impact fee, and that is for the Johnson Point Road and Hawkesbury Road project. Item 87 is an additional request for expenditure of $73,875, and this is for the Old Highway 99 and Tilley Road intersection improvements. And again, that is from the traffic impact fee. And all of those have, again, a capital
Corresponding revenue.
project. So this is so if you see on the capital, you see as additional revenue, and the revenue is coming from the traffic impact fee. That's what you see here as an expenditure from this fund. So, and in fact, most of the upcoming is the item number 88 is the same as an expenditure from the traffic impact fee to fund additional improvements on the additional costs on the Yum Highway and Meridian Road intersection improvement. So you may recall, we're planning to build a roundabout on that intersection, and it's currently under design. Item 89, and again, it's from the traffic impact fees, $87,000 of additional expenditure, and that's to fund the Old Highway 99 to the west side of the urban growth area. And that project is including line item number 17 of your capital.
Okay, can I just ask about that? So that's in the UGA. We're going to be funding an improvement, and then it's going to be annexed by Tumwater? Is that right?
Well, I don't know if they have plans to annex.
Well, I mean,
It's in
down
the
there.
UGA. That's
I
all
know,
the-
it's in the UGA,
The,
that's what I mean.
the concept of the UGA eventually will be part of the cities, yeah.
Do we take into consideration before we do a project like that, when that annexation attempt might be taking place?
We don't have a plan from the cities as to when that will occur. In the meantime, we need to address the need of the roadway system within the UGA because that's part of our responsibility.
Yeah, but I still think it would make sense to at least coordinate that or get some kind of an agreement if there is an annexation that we get refunded for that investment.
And we're working, as you may recall, we introduced a couple pieces of legislation.
Yes.
And where we wanted to have any local agreements on any annexation.
Yes.
That didn't go, but there's very well this session, but I believe Representative Dole is planning to introduce those bills again next year. And that will do exactly what you're looking for.
Romero, it's noon. We gotta cut it.
Okay.
Maybe you could explain to the public why we have to cut it, then they, you know.
Lot to
legal.
cover. We'll pick it up again Tuesday morning.
Yep.
At
And,
9-ish.
so in the meantime, if you have any questions, please review this report and let me know. So we'll have time to bring those questions to you for next Tuesday. Tuesday morning, I do expect you to give us thumbs up and thumbs down. So we'll begin that process with the capital
Got it.
report.
Thank you. And thanks, staff. Thank everybody for your endurance. And people at home, see you later. Thank you.